Chapter 2944. Blood-splashed Sun Luo formation. Triple Kill's face was pale and he was terrified. The moment he was sent flying, he immediately used his body movement to escape. He wanted to get away from Zhuowen. Traceless Shui, hurry up with the formation. If you don't hurry up, I will die. Triple Kill roared, his voice trembling. He sensed the threat of death and began to urge Traceless Shui. Bush, 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 bush. Beams of blood-red light shot out from the surrounding void. These beams of blood-red light were full of killing intent and terrifying power. In the surrounding void, countless beams of blood-red light began to intertwine, forming a blood-red boundary. The moment the blood-red boundary was formed, countless shadows of blood-red swords appeared at the edge of the boundary. The shadows of blood-red swords were so dense that it was as if there were no blood-red swords around. Zhuowen punched out and hit the first shadow of a blood-red sword in front of him. He was shocked to find that his fist had been hit by the shadow of a blood-red sword. Although the wound was not big, only about half an inch, and it was not deep, Zhuowen was really shocked. His body was at the peak of the 5-star Pangu sacred body. It could be said that it was the strongest body in this starry sky. Although it had not been cultivated to the peak, it was not something that the alien races in the untainted heavenly realm could compare with. The sword shadow formed by the formation did not seem to be very powerful. However, the moment Zhuowen collided with it, he found that the shadow of the blood-red sword was like liquid. It melted into the part of his body that was in contact with it and then caused a small explosion inside. It could be said that the attack of the shadow of the blood-red sword was not from the outside. Instead, it was like the spring rain that moistened things silently. It melted into the body and rushed out from the inside. If Zhuowen's body had not been strong enough, the moment the shadow of the blood-red sword entered his fist, it would have been suppressed by the pressure of the Pangu's sacred body. It would have been unable to enter the depths of his body through his blood. Zhuowen knew very well that if the shadow of the blood-red sword had entered the depths of his body through his blood, he would have suffered more than just a small injury. His internal organs would have been bleeding. Even if the Pangu sacred body was extraordinary, if the Pangu sacred body directly injured his internal organs, it would be a very serious injury. Although the Pangu sacred body had a powerful self-healing ability, it required a lot of energy times space. Happy Island. Seeing that kill in front of Triple Kill was getting closer, Zhuowen knew that it would be unrealistic to chasing him. Once he escaped from the boundary, Zhuowen knew that it would be unrealistic if he continued to chase after him. When he thought of this, Zhuowen no longer held back. Instead, he began to use the 3 profundities: sky-splitting blade, mysterious light of creation, and death of heaven and earth. The mysterious light of creation emitted a milky white light. It appeared around Zhuowen, forming a milky white armor. Of course, of world, of heaven, of earth, of heaven, of heaven, of n, of his, of. On the other hand, heaven and earth annihilation used destructive energy to surround Zhuowen, amplifying his strength. Moreover, it allowed Zhuowen's every move to contain a terrifying destructive power. Using the 3 profound meanings at the same time, Zhuowen's combat strength underwent an earth-shattering change. He was like a peerless god of war. Bang bang bang. The blood sword shadow's attacking method was indeed strange. It could enter the human body through the skin and create a terrifying destructive energy. However, the power of Upanishad inside the Pangu banner was definitely the strongest power in this universe. No matter how strange the blood sword shadow was, it could not break the power of Upanishad inside the Pangu banner. What? This guy? 3 kills stared in disbelief at Zhuowen, who remained unscathed under the countless blood swords and sword shadows. His eyes widened. He was well aware of the power of the blood splatter limitless formation, especially the characteristics of the attacks unleashed by the blood splatter limitless formation. It was absolutely a nightmare for most cultivators. He had thought that the dense blood swords could stop the young man in front of him. He did not expect that he had been overthinking. Zhuowen was also a little surprised. The 3 profound meanings were very effective against the blood splatter limitless formation. The strange blood sword shadow basically had no effect on Zhuowen. When the blood sword shadow touched the surface of his light of creation, it basically collapsed into a bloody mist and disappeared into the air. Traceless blood, what are you doing? Stop this guy. Seeing Zhuowen getting closer and closer, 3 Kill's pupils shrank. He quickly sent a voice transmission to Traceless blood. All of a sudden, the countless blood sword phantoms in the barrier collapsed into blood light. The blood light was like a wriggling viscous liquid, and it began to gather together. Finally, it formed a blood wave that blotted out the sky. The blood-red waves surged, containing an extremely terrifying murderous aura and tyrannical energy. It was much more terrifying than the dense blood swords from before. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He formed a sky blade with both hands and slashed out as if he was going to cut down the entire sky. The sound of cloth tearing was heard. Immediately, the rolling bloody wave was split into 3 parts by the sky blade. However, the moment the blood-colored wave was split apart, layers upon layers of blood-colored waves continued to surge forward. They were endless, one after the other. Zhuowen's hands moved as fast as lightning. The sky-splitting blade in his hands was like a crazy meat grinder, cleaving apart the scarlet wave that was coming at him layer by layer. When Zhuowen split the last bloody wave, he found that 3 Kills had reached the edge of the boundary. Outside the edge of the bounded domain, a figure was helping 3 Kills. Zhuowen also saw the figure clearly. He could not help but squint, because this figure was not unfamiliar to him. Traceless blood, Zhuowen muttered to himself. When 3 Kills mentioned Traceless blood's name, he had already thought of it, but he was not sure. Now that Traceless blood had appeared in person to help 3 Kills, he was completely sure. Speaking of which, when Zhuowen was in the 8 heavens, he had some connections with Traceless blood and had cooperated with him once. However, after Xue Wuhan broke free from the seal, he turned his back on Zhuowen and left the 8 heavens without saying a word about what Zhuowen had done. Of course, he also knew that he was too weak at that time. Traceless blood was already an expert in the 2nd step of the Dao validation realm. It would be strange if he could talk to a nobody like him. Dun, you're dead. 3 Kills walked out of the boundary after being helped by Traceless blood. He glared at Tun, who was in the formation, with undisguised pride on his face. Traceless blood, who was standing beside 3 Kills, looked at the young man in the formation with some doubts. The name Zhuowen was not unfamiliar to him. He remembered that there was a nobody in the 8 heavens called Zhuowen. However, Zhuowen's cultivation was too weak at that time, so he did not care. When he heard 3 Kills tell him that the assassination target was Zhuowen in the blood prison, he was a little surprised. Now that he saw the so-called Zhuowen, he sighed softly in his heart. This person was not the same person as the Zhuowen in his impression. Of course, he was still very shocked. This young man called Zhuowen was really heaven-defying. The aura he revealed was only that of the Lord of Mystery, but his true strength was simply explosive. Chapter 2945. Breaking the array. Zhuowen calmly looked at the smug expression on 3 Kills' face. He took out the Ho-E Divine Arrow and Ho-E Divine Bow, and then pulled the bowstring to 2/3. Violent killing intent instantly exploded. You think I can't do anything to you just because you're outside the barrier? Zhuowen sneered, the veins on his hands bulging. With a shout, he pulled the bowstring to a full moon. His killing intent underwent a qualitative leap, breaking through the sky. The entire blood splatter limitless array shook because of this killing intent. Bang! The Ho-E Divine Arrow shot out, forming a terrifying bloody light. Its power was condensed to the extreme, reaching a frightening level. Rumble! The Ho-E Divine Arrow instantly landed on the edge of the barrier. Immediately, the entire barrier began to tremble violently, and countless cracks began to appear on its surface. What? 3 Kills and Traceless blood were dumbfounded. What was going on? In order to set up the blood splatter limitless array, they had prepared 108 elite assassins from the blood prison. Logically speaking, such a lineup should be more than enough to kill an early-stage Lord of Creation, but this boy had only shot a single arrow, and the blood splatter limitless array was already on the verge of collapsing. Lord 3 Kills, run! Traceless blood reacted extremely quickly and immediately retreated. 3 Kills also reacted and rapidly retreated. 3 Kills was, after all, much stronger than Traceless blood, so the escape technique he used was also more brilliant. In an instant he overtook traceless blood and fled. Gotcha! Bloody light flashed, and the blood splatter limitless array completely shattered into countless pieces. Miserable screams rang out around the blood splatter limitless array. The blood prison elite assassins who had been arranged in the 108 positions of the array had all turned into dried corpses and fallen to the ground. They couldn't be more dead. The blood splatter limitless array was maintained by the blood essence of these elite assassins. Now that the blood splatter limitless array was broken, these elite assassins naturally couldn't survive. Zhuan stood in place, his face deathly pale. His arms couldn't withstand the terrifying killing intent from the Hou-Yi divine bow and had already exploded into a bloody mist. This was the first time Zhuan had used the Hou-Yi divine arrow with the Hou-Yi divine bow. When he pulled the bowstring to a full moon, the power was truly terrifying, but the price he had paid was not small. Ah! A tragic cry came from the void dimension's limitless void dimension. 3 limitless array limitless blood splatter limitless arrays limitless divine arrow. To the limitless array. Limitless array limitless array limitless. And limitless blood limitless blood limitless array limitless. After Zhuo Wen's arms slowly healed, he went to the place where 3 kills had fallen. When he saw that there was nothing left, he sighed. It seemed that Hou-Yi's godly arrow was too scary. 3 kills' spirit ring must have been destroyed. As for traceless blood, he had already escaped from this void dimension, and Zhuowen's divine sense couldn't detect him. Zhuowen sighed inwardly. If his arms had been injured, he would have been able to shoot another arrow and completely destroy traceless blood. After all, traceless blood was only an early-stage lord of creation. An ordinary arrow would have been enough to destroy him. Zhuan didn't stay here for long. Although this was the void dimension, it was too close to the door of darkness. The aftermath of this battle should have been noticed by some people. Not long after Zhuan left, several figures with extremely terrifying auras appeared in this void dimension. There were alien race and human cultivators among these figures. They were probably the powerhouses of this temporary alliance. It's the blood prison assassins. 108 blood prison assassins have been turned into corpses. 108? Could it be that the blood prison set up the blood splatter limitless array to kill someone? This is a forbidden technique of the blood prison. Who is the blood prison trying to kill this time? They even set up such a large array. Damn it, this place has been cleaned up. We can't find any trace of the murderer at all. These several powerful figures conversed for a while. After discovering that they couldn't find the murderer's trace, they left this void dimension. After Zhuowen left the void dimension, he found a rather remote ruin and released Xing Xinglan and Yao Xiangjuan from the Great World. Senior, are you okay? As soon as Yao Xiangjuan appeared, she looked at Zhuowen with concern in her beautiful eyes. Her gaze was also filled with guilt and worry. Obviously, Yao Xiangjuan was still blaming herself for her biting the hand that fed her just now. When Xing Xinglan saw that Yao Xiangjuan was so concerned about Zhuowen, a trace of resentment flashed in the depths of his eyes. However, his face was full of gratitude. It's okay. It's just a small injury. Zhuowen said indifferently. Xing Xinglan hurriedly flattered, Senior is indeed very brave. Even the blood prison's triple kill and the blood splatter limitless array couldn't do anything to you. Xing Xinglan naturally didn't think that Zhuowen had broken the blood splatter limitless array and triple kill. He thought that Zhuowen was just lucky and escaped. Even so, Xing Xinglan was indeed very shocked. The blood splatter limitless array was a forbidden technique of the blood prison. He had long heard of this. Moreover, he also knew that the blood prison's previous sect master had once used this blood splatter limitless array to kill a powerhouse at the initial stage of the Heaven Ascension stage. It was because he knew how terrifying the blood splatter limitless array was that Xing Xinglan was so shocked when he found out that Zhuowen had escaped. Yes, my luck is indeed good. Zhuowen didn't open his mouth to correct Xing Xinglan. After all, the latter was just a clown to him. He didn't need to explain this kind of thing to a clown. Now, lead the way to your Heaven and Earth Divine Sex team. Zhuan said indifferently to Xing Xinglan. Xing Xinglan didn't dare to disobey. He cupped his hands and answered, yes. Then, he led Zhuan and Yao Xiangjuan toward the door of darkness in the distance that was shrouded in black qi. In the open space in front of the door of darkness, there were two groups of cultivators who had drawn a clear line and occupied one side of the door of darkness. On one side were the human cultivators, and on the other side were the powerhouses of the foreign tribes. Where the human cultivators were, they were basically sitting cross-legged on praying mats. All of them were calm and composed. Where the powerhouses of the foreign tribes were, however, was very different. Instead, there were small animal skin tents set up one after another. Each animal skin tent represented the power of a foreign tribe. When Zhuan and the other two arrived in front of the door of darkness, this was the scene that he saw. On the side where the human cultivators were, Zhuan immediately saw the sect master of the 10 Ultimate Yin Corps sect, Senki Yin, and the team that he led. Chapter 2946. Heaven and Earth Divine Sexual quickly turned his gaze to the side where the foreign races were. His eyes fell on a beast skin tent and his heart began to beat fast. He could not hide his excitement. There was a flag with a phoenix pattern on the top of the beast skin tent. He knew that this beast skin tent was where the phoenix people were stationed. Chen Shui, Huan muttered. After knowing that the phoenix people's saintess had come, Huan could not calm down for a long time. Miss Yao, I heard that the phoenix people's saintess had also come. I wonder if you've seen her before? Zhuan suddenly asked Yao Xiangjuan, who was beside him. Yao Xiangjuan shook her head and said, the phoenix people's saintess had indeed come. However, the saintess wore a veil and rarely came out, so I've never seen her real face. However, I have heard that this holy maiden possesses a beauty that can captivate birds and beasts. She is so beautiful that the moon outshines the flowers. She has attracted the pursuit of many geniuses in the desolate heaven domain. In fact, many geniuses have even fallen in battle in order to win her heart. Zhuan nodded. He was even more certain that the phoenix people's saintess was Mu Chenxue. At the same time, his heart was filled with hatred. Zhuan was very unhappy with the geniuses who were pursuing the saintess that Yao Xiangjuan had mentioned. If he saw them, he would cripple them. Xing Xinglan brought Zhuan and Yao Xiangjuan to the open space where the human cultivators were. They arrived in front of one of the groups. There were not many people in this group, only around 17. Among them, Zhuan paid the most attention to the leader of the group. This was a white-haired but energetic old man with a rosacea nose. He always had a smile on his face and gave people an amiable feeling. However, the terrifying aura that was faintly emitted from this old man made people not dare to approach him. They kept a respectful distance from him. A powerhouse at the early stage of the sky-piercing realm, Zhuan's eyes turned solemn. He could sense an aura similar to Senki Yin from this old man. He knew that this old man's strength wasn't any weaker than Senki Yin. In addition to this old man, there were two other people with extremely powerful auras. They were most likely half-step lords of Heavenspan. These three old men were most likely in charge of managing this group. As for the others, their auras were not particularly strong. They should be disciples of the Yin and Yang divine sect. Sect leader! Xing Xinglan and Yao Xiangjuan hurriedly bowed to the old man, their eyes filled with reverence. From the looks of Xing Xinglan and Yao Xiangjuan, Yuan could tell that this red-nosed old man should be the sect master of the Yin and Yang divine sect. Senior, this is our Yin and Yang divine sect's sect master, and Xiaojin. He's a powerhouse at the initial stage of the Master of Heavenly Passage. You should salute him with us. Yao Xiangjuan hurriedly reminded him when she saw that Zhuan was indifferent. Zhuan merely cupped his hands to Xiaojin. He didn't even bow. Yao Xiangjuan and Xing Xinglan were so frightened that they almost fainted. Big brother, this is the sect master of the Yin and Yang divine sect. He's considered a peak figure in the Xianmi heavenly domain. You're actually saluting him as an equal? Are you tired of living? And Xiaojin nodded. He noticed the scarred youth that Xing Xinglan had brought back, and a look of doubt appeared in his eyes. Although he wasn't happy that Zhuan had saluted him as an equal, he didn't show it. For you, how bold of you to not kneel and salute our sect master. Before Xiaojin could speak, a youth with a sinister gaze slowly stood up and looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly expression. Zhuowen glanced indifferently at this youth. He found that the latter's cultivation wasn't bad. He was actually an early-stage lord of creation. Your sect master hasn't even said anything. What did you say? Zhuowen said indifferently. The youth was stunned at first. Then he revealed a furious expression. He suppressed his anger and said, "Who do you think you are? You dare to lecture me?" Zhuowen couldn't be bothered with this youth. Instead, he looked at Xiaojin and cupped his hands. "Sect Master, I was invited by Miss Yao to help you enter the door of darkness and fight for the witch ancestor's blood." You? Xiaojin's expression was strange. This youth in front of him was only the sect master of mystery. Who gave him the courage to use the yin and yang divine sect's name to enter the door of darkness? He even shamelessly said that he would help them fight for the witch ancestor's blood. Big brother, please, can you have some self-awareness? With your cultivation, you're trash. I'm afraid you'll be destroyed as soon as you enter the door of darkness. Where did you get the confidence to make such a request to us? The youth with the sinister gaze was furious. He said to Xiaojin, "Sect master, this is an arrogant person. He's simply here to cause trouble. Please allow me to teach this arrogant person a lesson." And Xiaojin glanced indifferently at Zhuowen, nodded, and sat cross-legged on the futon again. He also felt that this person was an arrogant person. He wasn't even interested in talking to him. Yao Xiangjuan was a little anxious. She hurriedly stopped the youth and said, "Senior brother, if you attack, someone will die. Junior sister, don't worry. Since this person came with you and junior brother Xing, I won't kill him. I'll just cripple him. I'll let him know how pathetic and foolish it is to be arrogant without strength." Seeing Yao Xiangjuan stop him, the youth's eyes were filled with infatuation. It was obvious that this youth had a lot of feelings for Yao Xiangjuan. "No, if you attack, your life will be in danger." Yao Xiangjuan shook her head. "Gee?" The youth's face stiffened. He looked at Yao Xiangjuan strangely and said, "Junior sister, did you say something wrong? Don't worry, this guy's cultivation isn't high. I won't kill him." "It's true. This senior's battle strength is terrifying. If you go up, someone will die." Yao Xiangjuan continued to persuade with a serious expression. The youth was speechless. Everyone in the group. "Senior brother, junior sister Yao is right. There is indeed a gap between you and this person. It's best if you don't attack." Xinglan laughed dryly. What a joke. He'd seen the strength of this scarred youth with his own eyes. Although he knew that this senior brother of his was quite strong, he was just trash in front of this scarred youth. The youth's face became even darker. It was almost impossible to see his exact expression. A surge of anger surged in his heart. He felt that he was being looked down upon. "Are the two of you crazy? Get out of the way. I'll teach this person a lesson today." The youth snorted coldly. He went around Xinglan and Yao Xiangjuan, and with a stomp of his foot, he shot explosively toward Zhuowen with a ferocious smile. Originally, he didn't want to be heavy-handed, but Yao Xiangjuan and Xinglan's words angered him. He wanted to cripple this person. "Trash, master of profound secrets. How strong can you be? Watch me beat you into pieces." The youth was very arrogant. He flashed in front of Zhuowen, raised his right hand, and slapped toward Zhuowen's face. He wanted to ruthlessly humiliate this person. Slap. Chapter 2947. Reaching an agreement. Zhuowen's eyes were calm as he ignored the youth whose head was stuck in the ground. Instead, he stepped on the youth's body and slowly walked toward Xiaojin. The poor youth had been struggling with all his might and was about to pull his head out of the ground. However, Zhuowen's foot caused the youth to spit out a mouthful of blood. His head was stuck in the ground again, and it was even deeper than before. Everyone from the Yin and Yang divine sect was dumbfounded as they stared at this scene. What was going on? The youth was the second most powerful prodigy of the Yin and Yang divine sect's younger generation. He had only cultivated for a few thousand years, yet he was already an early-stage Genesis Lord. His battle prowess was astonishing. Now, Such a prodigy had declared that he would teach a lesson to a cultivator from the profound secret sect. However, his head was still stuck in the ground, and he couldn't resist at all. Was he fucking kidding them? This defied common sense. On the other hand, Yao Xiangjuan and Xing Xinglan were calm. They already knew Zhuowen's strength. This was a ruthless person who could even kill a prodigy like Sauron. To be honest, the youth was trash compared to Sauron. He couldn't even be compared to this youth in front of them. And Xiao Jin looked at the youth in front of him with surprise. He hadn't expected the youth to be defeated so easily. Sect Master, and I should be qualified to cooperate with your Yin and Yang divine sect now, right? Zhuowen said with a faint smile. And Xiao Jin didn't agree directly. Instead, he said indifferently, if I'm not wrong, your main strength should come from your physical body, right? What kind of body tempering technique do you cultivate? Hee, Sect Master, and I'm sincerely cooperating with you, yet you're asking about my privacy? If Sect Master and doesn't think it's possible, then I can find other forces to cooperate with. Zhuowen shook his head. He knew that Xiao Jin was probably dissatisfied with his action of defeating the youth and wanted to suppress him. However, Zhuowen naturally didn't want to pay attention to Xiao Jin. Although he hadn't caused much of a commotion when he had slapped the youth to the ground, it had attracted the attention of the cultivators in the nearby teams. As long as he revealed his intention to cooperate, he believed that the others would gladly accept. And Xiao Jin was silent. Seeing that Zhuowen was really going to leave, he said, if you are really willing to cooperate with our Yin and Yang divine sect, I will gladly accept. It's just that I was a little suspicious of your identity just now, so I asked about your cultivation method. Zhuowen looked at Xiao Jin and said, Cult Master, and this world is so big, and there are all sorts of strange things. Geniuses aren't only in your great powers. There are also rogue cultivators. You're right, I'll cooperate with you, and Xiao Jin nodded, but before he could finish, a furious roar came from nearby. The young man struggled to pull his head out of the ground. His face and ears were red, and there was a big bump on his forehead. He was in an extremely sorry state. At this moment, the gloomy youth was furious and had lost his mind. He recklessly rushed toward Zhuowen like a wild beast. Bastard, I, Chao Kangxing, am not finished with you today. If I don't destroy you, I will change my surname to yours. The gloomy youth roared angrily and even ignored Xiao Jin, who was standing behind Zhuowen. He just wanted to beat this young man to death. Bang. But in next to no time, the gloomy young man noticed to his astonishment that a large hand had blocked in front of Zhuowen, and then his attack was completely blocked. At the same time, a horrible force broke out, causing the gloomy youth to snort and retreat continuously. Fortunately, although this force was vast and horrible, it was obviously not intended to attack the gloomy youth, so he was not seriously injured. The gloomy youth came to his senses and looked at the figure standing beside Zhuowen. He was surprised and said hurriedly, Cult Master, you, and Xiao Jin said in a low voice, Kangxing, that's enough. This little brother is on our side. Don't disgrace me. The gloomy youth's face was ugly, but after all, Xiao Jin was the cult master of the Yin and Yang divine sect. He dared not disobey Xiao Jin's orders. Since we are on the same side, let's keep harmony. By the way, little brother, what's your name? Xiao Jin laughed like a spring breeze. Just call me Longwen. Zhuowen said. So it's little brother Longwen. Sit down first. It should be your first time at the door of darkness, right? Xiao Jin said. Zhuowen nodded and said nothing. Now, let me tell you about the door of darkness. It's like this. Xiao Jin took out a futon and placed it next to Zhuowen's seat. After indicating for him to sit down, he started to explain the situation at the door of darkness and what Zhuowen needed to do to cooperate with them. Through Xiao Jin's introduction, Zhuowen knew that there was a heaven-level array on the door of darkness. When the Alliance arrived at the door of darkness, the human practitioners and the powerhouses of the alien tribe joined forces to break the array. In the end, they found that it was impossible. It even caused the array to backfire and injure many masters and powerhouses. Because of this, the Alliance's powerhouses were basically blocked outside the door of darkness. However, They later found that although the restriction array on the Door of Darkness was powerful, it only targeted powerhouses above the Master of Creation level. The array formation on the Door of Darkness would not react to cultivators below the Master of Creation's cultivation level. Since cultivators below the Master of Creation level can pass through the Door of Darkness, why do I see that many cultivators who meet the requirements have not entered the Door of Darkness? Zhuan had a puzzled look in his eyes. As soon as he'd entered this place, he'd noticed that there were many cultivators below the Lord of Creation among the human cultivators and outsiders, but none of them had entered the Door of Darkness. Because we are all waiting for someone. And Xiao Jin said in a low voice. Waiting for who? Zhuan asked. Waiting for the most powerful prodigies of the various factions to gather. The same goes for the alien tribe. And Xiao Jin said. I see. Zhuan revealed a look of understanding. After entering this place, he had indeed seen many cultivators below the Master of Creation level. However, most of them were below the Master of Creation level, and only a small number of them were Masters of Creation. However, their auras were not particularly powerful, and there was a large gap between them and geniuses like Yi Qidong. Moreover, he had indeed not seen Yi Qidong, Su Chen, and the other freakish geniuses of the host region among the human cultivators. According to Xiaojin's introduction, they had not planned to send their most powerful prodigies into the ancient city of darkness this time. Instead, they had sent their sex powerhouses of the older generation. After all, the ancient city of darkness was fraught with danger. Although the sex geniuses were exceptionally talented, they had cultivated for too short a time, and their strength was still lacking compared to the older generation's powerhouses. Chapter 2948. Doubt, however, the array formation on the Door of Darkness was too strange and caught the foreign and human cultivators off guard. The older generation of cultivators was basically at the creation realm and above, so they were not qualified to enter the Door of Darkness. As for ordinary creators, even if they entered the Door of Darkness, they would not gain much. They might not even obtain any treasures and might die inside. They did not want to miss out on the things inside the Door of Darkness, so they notified the powerful geniuses in their sects and asked them to come to the Door of Darkness, intending to let them enter and snatch the ancestral witch blood. It was the same for the foreign races. They were all notifying the geniuses in their respective races to come. Before all the geniuses arrived, the two sides had an agreement that no one could enter the Door of Darkness. Now, let's talk about cooperation. If you can obtain the ancestral witch blood for the Yin and Yang divine sect, I can accept you as my only disciple. Your status in the Yin and Yang divine sect is second only to mine. The other members of the team were shocked by Xiaojin's offer. They felt that Xiaojin's offer was too generous. On the other hand, Xing Xinglan and Chao Kangqing's expressions were not particularly good. Their eyes flickered, and no one knew what they were thinking. Zhuan shook his head and said, Sect Master, and I don't like to join forces. I like the undisciplined life of a rogue cultivator. If it were not for the fact that only cultivators recommended by the major forces of the temporary alliance could pass through the Door of Darkness, Zhuan would not have cooperated with Xiaojin. He would have waited for everyone to arrive before entering the Door of Darkness. However, he knew that this was not realistic. Rogue cultivators were even stopped at the entrance of the dark ancient city. If he wanted to enter the Door of Darkness under the eyes of so many powerful cultivators, he would be courting death. Therefore, he had no choice but to cooperate with the Yin and Yang divine sect. His goal was purely to get a spot. Then what do you want? And Xiaojin asked. I promise that if I can find the ancestral witch blood, I will bring back a bottle for you, Sect Master. However, if I obtain any other treasures in the Door of Darkness, they must all belong to me. And after I leave the Door of Darkness, you must protect my life, Zhuan said. And Xiaojin narrowed his eyes, his expression somewhat cold. Clearly, he felt that Zhuan's conditions were somewhat harsh. His original plan was to give Zhuan everything he had obtained from the Door of Darkness to him. He would then take Zhuan as his last disciple and make Zhuan a disciple of the Yin and Yang divine sect. He would also give Zhuan a high position and recruit him. Little did he know that Zhuan didn't buy it at all. Zhuan rejected his request and only intended to give him a bottle of ancestral witch's blood. Seeing that Xiaojin was hesitating, he pointed at the gloomy Chao Kongqing and said, "Sect Masterin, you saw it just now. This person is the strongest in your team, but in my opinion, he's nothing much. Not to mention the ancestral witch's blood, I'm afraid that I'll die in the door of darkness before I can even find the ancestral witch. However, I have the confidence to bring out the ancestral witch's blood for you." Chao Kongqing burst into rage, but after he noticed Xiaojin's cold gaze, he could only forcefully suppress his rage and said coldly, "Long One, I think you've made a mistake. I'm not the strongest genius in the sect. If senior brother Yi Hanfei was here, you wouldn't be so arrogant." Zhuan raised his eyebrows. He had heard of Yi Hanfei's name before. When he went to the Starry Sky Tower, he saw this name on the Starry Sky contribution list in the Starry Sky Square. Yi Hanfei was ranked third on the Starry Sky contribution list, second only to Zhongli Haoyan and Yi Qidong. He was a true genius. Chao Kongqing saw Zhuowen's strange expression and his eyes were full of pride. He had been suppressed by this guy before, which made him feel very aggrieved. Now, he finally had a chance to make this guy suffer. The Yi Hanfei you mentioned might not be able to get the ancestral witch's blood, but I can guarantee it, Zhuowen said seriously. Zhuowen wasn't bragging. He was indeed confident. After all, his body had fused with 3 ancestral witches' venomous insects and cultivated the Pangu's sacred body. He was very familiar with the ancestral witch's habits. He knew that even if he found the corpse of ancestral witch Gonggong and wanted to extract the blood essence, it would be very difficult for ordinary cultivators. However, it wouldn't be difficult for him. "Can you guarantee it?" And Xiaojin snorted. He also felt that Zhuan was too arrogant. He knew more about the ancestral witch than anyone else and knew that the ancestral witch's blood was very difficult to extract. Even if they could find the ancestral witch's corpse, it would take a long time to extract it. Although everyone who entered the door of darkness was here for the ancestral witch's blood, he knew that it was very difficult for ordinary cultivators to extract the blood essence from the ancestral witch's flesh and blood. Therefore, when they found the ancestral witch's corpse, they would first rob it. Then, they would bring the flesh and blood back to the sect and slowly refine it to extract the blood essence from the flesh and blood. However, this process was very long. You are indeed bragging. Although the ancestral witch's body is huge, its structure is completely different from ours. Their flesh and blood are very complex and as tough as iron. It would take hundreds of years to extract a drop of blood essence. Chao Kongqing sneered. "Don't worry. If I can't bring back a bottle of ancestral witch's blood, I will let you do whatever you want with me." Zhuan ignored Chao Kongqing and looked at Xiaojin. And Xiaojin looked deeply at Zhuan. Since the other party had said so, he really had no reason to refuse. Don't underestimate a bottle of ancestral witch's blood. The ancestral witch was a starry sky creature that was born at the beginning of the starry sky. A drop of its blood essence had great effects. A bottle of ancestral witch's blood was definitely a priceless treasure. I agree to your conditions, but you have to remember your promise. And Xiaojin said lightly. Don't worry. Zhuowen nodded. Well, we still need to wait a few more days. After Yi Hanfei and the other geniuses have arrived, you can represent the Yin and Yang divine sect to enter the door of darkness. And Xiaojin said. While Zhuowen and Xiaojin were talking about cooperation, Mde suddenly stood up in the tent of the Merman tribe in the alien camp. Elder Mde, what's wrong? The merman standing next to him looked at Mde in surprise and confusion. I feel the fluctuation of the merman seal spell. Mde's voice was cold. What? Merman seal spell? Did Sir Sauron do it? The merman's eyes flashed coldly when he heard this. The merman seal spell was a taboo technique of the merman tribe. Moreover, only mermen with special bloodlines in the merman tribe could master it. Chapter 2949. Phoenix People's second elder. In other words, it would constantly weaken a cultivator's fortune. Once the fortune was exhausted, all the merfolk would know who the culprit was. At that time, the cultivator would be hunted down by all the merfolk, and they would not rest until the cultivator was dead. It could be said that this kind of spell technique was a curse that harmed others without benefiting oneself. In addition, the conditions for using it were very harsh, so very few merfolk used this kind of spell technique. Usually, only merfolk were unwilling to die before they died and used this kind of spell technique to curse the murderer so that they would die a horrible death. And now, MDA felt the aura of the merfolk seal curse. In other words, the cultivator who was cursed was nearby and was very likely the murderer who killed Sauron. Let's go. Follow me. MDA's eyes were spitting fire as he led 7 or 8 merfolk out of the tent aggressively and walked towards the human cultivator camp. MDA's actions naturally attracted the attention of the foreign race and human cultivators. Especially the human cultivators, their gazes were very vigilant as they looked at the aggressive MD. MD, what are you doing? In the Een Corp's sex camp, Senchin stood up and blocked Muda's path. Other than Senki Een, the leaders of the other teams were also eyeing MDA covetously. Although they had formed a temporary alliance with the foreign race, the war between the human race and the foreign race had lasted for countless years. There was no trust between the two sides. If not for the Door of Darkness, the two sides would not have formed an alliance. MDA looked at Senki Een with fear. MDA was only a master of creation and was far inferior to Senki Een. If the leader of the merfolk race came, they would not be afraid of Senki Een. Unfortunately, their leader did not come. However, MDA was not scared off by Senki Een. This time, the foreign race had also sent several early-stage heaven ascension experts. He knew that Senki Een would not dare to touch him. Our merfolk race's genius died outside the dark ancient city. I heard that he was killed by a human cultivator. MDA said coldly. MDA's words caused an uproar. Sauron of the merfolk race was very famous in this temporary alliance. It was said that he was from a foreign race with a special bloodline and had a place among the younger generation of the primitive heaven domain. Although Sauron's cultivation was only at the peak of the creator realm, he could fight with early-stage creation experts. He was a young expert on the same level as Yi Qidong and the other top geniuses of the human race. Such a genius from a foreign race had died in the outskirts of the ancient city of darkness, and at the hands of a human cultivator at that. Had a creation lord killed him? That. N. Zhuowen frowned slightly. Looking at Muda blocked by Senchin, he had a bad feeling. How did MDA confirm that Sauron's murderer was here? Senchin's eyes flashed with surprise, and he immediately said coldly, "So you think the murderer is among us? You don't have any evidence. How can you be sure?" Before Sauron died, he placed a shark seal curse on the murderer. I can feel the aura of the shark seal curse. That's why I'm sure the murderer is here. MD snorted and continued, or is Sect Master Sun trying to protect the murderer? Senki Yin's eyes narrowed. Elder MD, I wouldn't have any objections if your merfolk patriarch spoke like this in front of me. But you don't have the right. Saying so, Senchin's powerful aura suddenly erupted from his body. Muda's face paled as he let out a muffled groan and involuntarily took a few steps back, glaring angrily at Senchin. However, soon, an old man with flames burning above his head walked over from the side of the outsiders. His powerful fire chi swept over and cancelled out Senchin's aura. Senki Yin's expression changed slightly. He looked at the old man with fear and said, "Phoenix People's second elder? Many thanks for your help, second elder." MD quickly cupped his hands towards the old man, his eyes full of reverence. The flame-haired old man nodded at MD, then looked at Senki Een and said, "Sect Master Sen, as far as I know, Sauron did die in the hands of you human cultivators. Moreover, the shark seal curse is real. MD didn't lie to you about this." I heard that the shark seal curse is real. As long as the blood of a merfolk powerhouse is smeared on the murderer, traces of the shark seal curse will appear. At that time, we'll know if it's the murderer or not. As soon as the Phoenix People's second elder appeared, Senki Een fell silent. The second elder was a true expert of the Phoenix people. He possessed the Phoenix bloodline. Although his cultivation was the same as Senki Yin's, at the early stage of the Heaven Ascension Master Realm, he was much stronger than Senki Een. It could be said that these two elders could be considered the true strongest experts in the alien army. Although the number of early-stage Transcendence Realm experts sent by the aliens was not as many as that of the human race, these two elders alone could take on 3 or even 4 Transcendence Realm experts without any problem. Everyone, let's not be so friendly. We're now in an alliance. It's better not to be so hostile. We haven't even entered the door of darkness and we're already fighting. That's very unwise. Another middle-aged man walked out from the human cultivator's side. This middle-aged man had fair skin and was extremely handsome, like a woman. However, this person's aura was also very powerful, almost on par with Senki-in. He was also an early-stage Heaven Ascension Master. This person is Sect Master Xiang Puyu of the Scarlet Firmament Sword Tower, the strongest Dao Palace faction in the Western Dao domain. He's also an early-stage Heaven Ascension Master. His strength is not ordinary. Yao Xiangjuan whispered when she saw Zhuowen's puzzled expression. Zhuowen nodded and cast a grateful look at Yao Xiangjuan. Sect Master Xiang, I also want to be friendly. However, Sauron is dead, and he was killed by a human cultivator for no reason. Also, our merfolk races Li Yang and 5 other elites died in that person's hands. Do you think I can still be friendly? MDA's gaze was cold and his tone was very unfriendly. Now that he had the support of the second elder of the Phoenix people, he was much more confident. How about this, Elder MD? You can come here and look. However, if you can't find the culprit, then you're slandering the human race without permission. What will you do then? Xiang Puyu was all smiles, but his words were not polite. MD frowned and immediately said, If I really sensed wrongly, then I apologize to you. Xiang Puyu and Senki-in looked at each other and nodded. Senki-in said, Elder MD, then you can come and check. I hope you'll properly apologize to us later. MDA sneered and did not answer. Instead, he followed his senses and walked towards the depths of the human cultivators. Chapter 2950. SS Confrontation. At this moment, all the cultivators of the human and foreign races followed MDA's gaze and landed on the young man. The young man had 2 scars on his face, and his gaze was calm. He sat cross-legged on a praying mat, unmoving like a mountain. Could it be that the merfolk elder thinks this person is the culprit? No way, this guy is just the Lord of Profound Secrets. Is this MDA deliberately provoking us? Sauron's matter is just a lie fabricated by this old man. The surrounding people discussed animatedly, and their gazes toward MDA became unfriendly. Senki-in and Xiang Puyu both frowned. The moment they saw the young man with the scars, they also thought MDA was deliberately stirring up trouble. However, although the Phoenix people's second elder's gaze flickered, he didn't say anything to stop it. He knew the merfolk seal better than anyone else. Since MD could sense the aura of the merfolk seal, it meant that the cultivator carrying the merfolk seal was nearby. MD looked coldly at the young man in front of him and said somewhat hesitantly, You have the aura of the merfolk seal on your body. You killed Sauron, right? MD was somewhat hesitant. The aura of the young man in front of him was too weak. He was just the Lord of Profound Secrets. He suspected that his senses were wrong. Sauron was a merfolk genius with a special bloodline. If he was killed by a Lord of Creation powerhouse, he could still believe it. But in the end, it was just the Lord of Profound Secrets. How could he dare to believe this? This result even made him doubt his life. However, he did indeed sense the aura of the merfolk seal on this person, which was why he asked this question. He knew that the aura of the merfolk seal definitely wasn't a fluke. There had to be a reason. Perhaps this person was related to Sauron's murderer. Zhuowen looked calmly at MD and said indifferently, What do you think? MD narrowed his eyes and looked coldly at the young man in front of him. He was surprised that this person could be so calm. Ordinary lords of profound secrets would tremble in fear when facing a Lord of Creation powerhouse like him. The better ones would just pretend to be calm. However, he found that this person was terrifyingly calm, as if he didn't care about him. What do you mean you think? I'm asking you a question. MDA's expression did not look too good. He no longer held back the aura in his body, completely suppressing the youth in front of him. However, The moment MDA's aura rushed out, it was scattered by another powerful aura. Moreover, this aura was much stronger than MDA's. The latter could not help but stagger and take a few steps back. He looked fearfully at the red-nosed old man behind Jun. The leader of the Yin and Yang divine sect, and Xiaojin? Muda frowned slightly and continued, "Sect master, and I remember that this person isn't a disciple of your Yin and Yang divine sect, right?" "Now it is." And Xiaojin's eyes were cold, showing no signs of weakness. The reason why he suddenly erupted with his aura was not only because Jun had reached an agreement with him, but also because of MDA's words. He had also heard of the shark seal curse. Since this kid had the shark seal curse on him, it was very likely that Sauron had been killed by him. His guess was not baseless. Just now, when this young man defeated Chao Kangqing with a single move, he knew that this young man's strength far surpassed Chao Kangqing's. Adding on the fact that this young man had the shark seal curse on him, he knew that this young man might really have killed Sauron. Thinking of this, and Xiaojin looked at Zhuan in a new light. Sauron's strength was very terrifying, and he was definitely ranked among the top of the younger generation in the Great Desolate Heaven domain. Although he was still inferior to the top few monstrous geniuses in the Xianmi heavenly domain, it was enough to look down on the majority of the younger generation. If this young man really had the strength to kill Sauron, and Xiaojin was even more willing to cooperate with this young man and protect him. After all, a genius with such strength entering the door of darkness would increase the competitiveness of their Yin and Yang divine sect. MDA's expression was not good, but he did not speak. The leader of the Yin and Yang divine sect, and Xiaojin, was also an early-stage sky-piercing lord expert and was much stronger than him. He did not dare to challenge such an existence. For a moment, the atmosphere became subtle and awkward. Sect master, and I still believe in MDA's character. He will not casually accuse others. How about this? In order to prove whether or not this person has the shark seal curse, why don't we use the method I just mentioned to verify it? The awkward atmosphere lasted for a while before the second elder of the Phoenix people laughed and walked forward to mediate. When the second elder of the Phoenix people arrived, MDA heaved a sigh of relief, but in Xiaojin's gaze became serious. This elder's cultivation was the same as his, at the early stage of sky-piercing lord, but his strength was much stronger than his. After all, he was a foreign race with the Phoenix bloodline and was blessed by the heavens. At the same time, Xiang Puyu and Senki In also came forward and curiously sized up Jun. Both of them were early-stage sky-piercing lords, so they could naturally tell that this young man in front of them was in disguise. Especially Senki In, who frowned slightly. He felt that this young man gave him a familiar feeling. However, Senki In did not particularly care. Since this person had some relationship with Xiaojin, his background should not be low. Perhaps he had seen him in the Heaven and Earth divine sect before. Senki In and Xiang Puyu were mainly curious about why this young man in front of them had the shark seal curse on him. Could it be that this young man had really killed Sauron? Of course, the two of them did not believe this conjecture at all, because it was just nonsense. They had both seen Sauron's strength. Even an early-stage creator might not be able to defeat him. This master of mystery was 2 major realms lower than a creator, and he was also from one of the 10 major races, the mermaid race. Wanting to kill Sauron 2 major realms above him was simply inconceivable. And Xiaojin frowned slightly. He did not expect the second elder of the Phoenix people to stand up for MDA. He did not fear MDA, but the second elder of the Phoenix people could not help but be apprehensive. This was a true expert. Sect master, and is my face not enough? The second elder of the Phoenix people said somewhat unhappily. And Xiaojin was in a difficult position. He guessed that this young man was very likely Sauron's murderer. If he let MDA confirm it, this young man would definitely be confirmed. At that time, it would be difficult for him to say anything. After all, he was in the wrong. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes revealed a nervous expression. She knew that Zhuan was indeed Sauron's murderer. Since MDA was so sure, it meant that Sauron had done something to Zhuan's body. Xing Xinglan's eyes revealed a hint of schadenfreude. Chapter 2951. Verification MD sneered at Juan and said, arbitrary? You have no proof? Let me tell you, our merfolk race is very sensitive to the shark seal curse. You do have this smell on you and you still want to quibble? If you really aren't the murderer, you can let me verify it. Everyone looked at Juan, obviously waiting to see how he would answer MDA. To be honest, most people didn't quite believe that this person was Sauron's murderer, including MDA himself and the two elders. If MDA hadn't sensed the shark seal curse on this person, he definitely wouldn't have suspected him. Now he planned to verify it. If this person really had the shark seal curse on him, then he would definitely take him away today and search his soul to see how he got hit by the shark seal curse. After all, this was only the Lord of Profound Secrets. The Heaven and Earth Divine sect definitely wouldn't place too much importance on such a cultivator. When the time came, he would at most pay a portion of the price. I can let you verify it, but if the verification results show that I'm not the murderer, does that mean you're deliberately framing me? Juan asked. MDA was stunned. He didn't expect this cultivator to be so confident and even ask him a question. This was unexpected, so he was stunned. If the results show that I'm wrong, then I'll apologize to you when the time comes. MDA said indifferently. Apologize? Juan sneered and didn't answer. What? That's not enough? MDA looked at the sneering Juan in astonishment. Far from enough. If I don't have the shark seal curse on me, then I want you to kneel on the ground, kowtow 3 times and kowtow 9 times, call me grandfather, and then apologize. Apart from that, I want the spirit ring in your hand as an apology. Juan said calmly. When these words came out, the surroundings were in an uproar, and they all looked at Juan in astonishment. They clearly didn't expect this Lord of Profound Secrets cultivator to be so awesome. With such a low cultivation, he actually dared to challenge a master of creation like MDA. Wasn't this a blatant provocation? Everyone looked at MDA and found that the latter's expression wasn't very good. What? Didn't Elder MDA confirm that I'm the murderer? Now you're scared? Since he was scared, there was no need to prove it. Although my cultivation is not as good as yours, I am still a member of the Yin and Yang divine sect. I am not someone you can easily manipulate, Juan said. MDA's lungs were about to explode from anger. He didn't expect this mere Lord of Profound Secrets to be so arrogant, actually daring to negotiate terms with him. He was sure that this kid definitely had the shark seal curse on him. He was trying to provoke him to leave, but he wouldn't fall for it. If I've wronged you, I can agree to your condition. However, if I have not wronged you, you will have to come with me. Let me handle everything. MDA said. Sure. Juan nodded. When Juan agreed, and Xiao Jin frowned slightly. He never expected that Juan would actually agree to MDA's request to verify the mermaid seal. Was he courting death? Yao Xiangjuan's pretty face turned pale, and her delicate body trembled. She couldn't understand why Juan would agree to this MDA. Rather, Xing Xinglan's gaze was dark, the corners of his mouth revealing a trace of a smile. He knew that this person was dead for sure. His IQ was really worrying, to actually really agree to MDA. This matter needs others to testify. I feel that Sect Master Sen, Sect Master Xiang, and Sect Master and can be witnesses. No one can go back on their word, Juan said solemnly. Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu naturally had no objections. Rather, it was in Xiao Jin's expression that was not too good. But he also knew that since this Juan agreed, it was impossible to go back on his word. He could only agree. Then I'll have Second Elder do it on my behalf. I hope that when the time comes, when the mermaid seal curse is activated on your body, don't rely on other powerhouses to act shamelessly, MDA said. You too. Let's begin now. Juan said very freely. MD did not talk nonsense either. He cut open his thumb and dripped a drop of bright-colored blood essence on the back of Juan's hand. The method to verify whether or not a cultivator had the mermaid seal curse was very simple. It required the blood essence of a mermaid powerhouse to be smeared on the back of the cultivator's hand. If this cultivator really did have the mermaid seal curse in his body, there would inevitably be traces of the mermaid seal curse on the back of the cultivator's hand. If not, there would not be any. MDA's blood essence dripped on the back of Juan's hand, and he stared at the back of Zhuowen's hand. At the same time, Xiang Puyu, Senki Yin, and Xiao Jin, and the second elder of the Phoenix people, as well as the other surrounding cultivators, all curiously looked at the back of Zhuowen's hand, waiting for the results to appear. After about 10 breaths of time, MDA's blood essence fused with the back of Zhuowen's hand, and nothing else happened. MDA was dumbstruck. What was going on? He clearly felt the aura of the mermaid seal curse on this child's body. Why was it that when he used his own blood essence to verify it, there were no traces of the mermaid seal curse? Could it be that he had sensed wrongly? MD did not believe in heresy and once again cut open his already healed thumb. Fresh blood flowed out and dripped onto the back of Zhuowen's hand. Another 10 breaths of time passed, and there were no traces of the mermaid seal curse on the back of Zhuowen's hand. MDA was stunned. He did not believe in heresy and continued to use his blood essence, but he was stopped by Zhuon. Elder MD, your blood is too fishy. There's no need to try again. If you continue, I'm afraid I won't be able to take it, Zhuon said with a disgusted expression. Hearing this, Elder MD almost spat out a mouthful of blood. This guy is too disgusting. Try again. MD's breathing was rapid, and his eyes were about to turn red. Enough. And Xiao Jin spoke, stopping MD, and continued, Elder MD, you can't do it more than 3 times. You've already tried twice, and there are no traces of the mermaid seal curse. That means there is no mermaid seal curse on Long Wen's body. If you still want to try again, do you think we're all idiots? The expression of the Phoenix people's second elder was also not very good, and he gave MD a cold glance. Originally, he intervened in this matter because their Phoenix people were currently cooperating with the merfolk race. The two races even had a marriage alliance. If not for the cooperation, he could not be bothered to care about this MD's business. He originally thought that this was just a small matter, showing up a little. After MD finished dealing with it, he did not need to do anything and this MD would owe him a favor. But he did not expect that he overreached himself now. Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu, the two people, also looked at MDA coldly. Although the two people did not know this scarred youth at all, they were all people of the same race after all. Their attitude toward other races was very consistent. The 3 great initial stage Heaven Ascension Lord powerhouses were all targeting him, making MDA's scalp tingle, and his expression was very ugly. He looked at the Phoenix people's second elder beside him. He knew that he could only rely on this Phoenix people's second elder now. The second elder coughed dryly and said with a faint smile, since it was MD who made a mistake, then so be it. We won't disturb everyone anymore. Chapter 2952. Issue a challenge. I say, Elder MD, what happened to your promise? You wrongly accused me and now you plan to leave? An indifferent voice sounded, causing MDA's figure to pause. MDA didn't say anything. Instead, it was the Phoenix race's second elder who smiled faintly and said, I say, human races junior, one must judge the situation and size up the situation. Don't push your luck too far. MDA was just joking with you. The moment the second elder of the Phoenix people said this, the surrounding human cultivators went into an uproar, their eyes spitting fire. This second elder of the Phoenix people was too shameless. MDA had clearly promised to kneel down and apologize to his grandfather, and even offered his spirit ring. Now, he was going back on his word. Did he still have any face? Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and Xiao Jin's expressions weren't good. This was no longer a matter between Zhuon and MDA, but a conflict between the human race and the foreign race. If the 3 of them let the second elder of the Phoenix people take MDA away so openly, wouldn't it prove that the human cultivators were afraid of the foreign race? Second elder, this joke isn't funny. This MDA said it himself. Do you want to just let it go like this? Senki Yin coldly snorted. What? Sect Masterson wants to fight with me over such a small matter? The second elder of the Phoenix people turned around and looked at Senki Yin with raging flames in his eyes. His fiery hair burst out, and the surrounding temperature rose sharply. It was exceptionally terrifying. Senki Yin's expression was fearful. He didn't think that the second elder of the Phoenix people would be so shameless. He actually didn't distinguish between right and wrong and planned to turn hostile. Sect Master and this person is from your yin and yang divine sect. You decide what to do. Senki Yin looked at Xiao Jin behind him. Xiang Puyu stood to the side and remained silent. And Xiao Jin frowned slightly. He knew that Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu were planning to push all the responsibility for this matter onto him. He sighed and looked at Zhuan. He secretly transmitted his voice. Long One, the strength of this second elder of the Phoenix people is very terrifying. Now that MDA is unable to verify the shark seal curse on your body, let's just forget about it. The corners of Zhuo Wen's mouth curled up into a cold smile, yet he didn't answer Xiaojin. Instead, he glanced at the surrounding human cultivators and said, "Everyone, this is indeed a private matter of mine, and it might have nothing to do with all of you. But have you ever thought about what would happen if the one who was wrongly accused today wasn't me, but anyone here? He's just an elder of an alien race. How dare he barge into our human camp and accuse human cultivators of his own accord? That's one thing, but after making a mistake, he even went back on his word. Not only did he not apologize, he even acted as if nothing had happened. Do you think that's fair? If it were you, would you be able to bear it? Or, do you think we human beings should always be inferior to the non-human kind?" Zhuowen's voice was getting louder and louder. The surrounding human cultivators all stood up in unison. Their eyes shone with an unprecedented light. MDA's actions just now had already aroused everyone's dissatisfaction and indignation. Now, Zhuowen's words were like a fuse that ignited a bomb, igniting everyone's emotions. The enmity between the human race and the non-human kind had been accumulating for a long time. Although they had temporarily formed an alliance, there were still some small conflicts in the dark. However, the matter was not blown out of proportion, so both sides did not say anything. But now, MDA had publicly accused a human cultivator. Moreover, after making a mistake, he even abandoned his apology and previous promise. He was simply a scum who looked down on the human race. The Phoenix people's second elder and MDA looked at the many human cultivators behind them blocking their path. Their expressions immediately became unsightly. While the human cultivators were blocking the Phoenix people's second elder and MDA, the non-humankind camp also stood up and released their terrifying aura without holding back. Sect Master Sin, Sect Master Xiang, and Sect Master An, are you human cultivators planning to break our alliance and declare war on us? The Phoenix people's second elder said with a cold gaze. Senki Yin was silent. He did not expect that youth to incite everyone. At this moment, if he came out to stop them, he would definitely be misunderstood. He would not take the blame for this. Xiang Puyu and Xiaojin had also turned mute. They simply did not answer the question of the Phoenix people's second elder. Second elder, we have never declared war on you non-human kind. We have always hoped to cooperate with you, but you are not sincere. This MDA had a bet with Longwen. In the end, MDA lost. Instead, he did not even apologize. Not to mention, he did not even hand over his spirit ring. Do you really think we human cultivators are easy to bully? And Xiaojin's eyes flickered as he coldly looked at the Phoenix people's second elder. Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu were still silent. It seemed that they did not want to get involved in this matter. The Phoenix people's second elder was so angry that he laughed. Sect Masterin, it seems that you really don't understand the situation. You want to openly oppose us for a mere trash of the Lord of Profound Secrets? Yes, Sect Masterin. This child is only the Lord of Profound Secrets. To us, he is just an ant. There is no need for you to protect him like this. How about this? I will take this child away. My merfolk race will give you enough compensation. MDA, who was standing beside the Phoenix people's second elder, also hurriedly replied. And Xiaojin was silent. He looked at Zhuowen and began to hesitate. Although Zhuowen had a cooperative relationship with him, he was still not a member of the Yin and Yang divine sect. Now that he had offended the Phoenix people's second elder for this child, it seemed that the gains did not make up for the losses. After Xiaojin's silence, MD cackled and looked at Xun. His eyes were full of pride and disdain. He really did not take this Lord of Profound Secrets seriously. In his eyes, this was just a piece of trash. He felt that Xiaojin knew the pros and cons. He definitely would not oppose a terrifying expert like the Phoenix People's second elder for this child. The instant Xiaojin fell silent, Yuan suddenly walked out of the crowd and came in front of MDA and the Phoenix People's second elder. I say, Elder MD, what will it take for you to apologize to me and hand over your spirit ring? Yuan said coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. This MD was really too shameless. Yuan's killing intent rose in his heart. MDA also saw the killing intent in Yuan's eyes, but he didn't care. After all, in his eyes, this was just a piece of trash belonging to the Lord of Profound Secrets. So what if he wanted to kill him? He was no match for him at all. You want me to apologize and hand over my spirit ring? Dream on, unless you can defeat me in a direct confrontation. Ha, a piece of trash belonging to the Lord of Profound Secrets like you can't even compare to a single finger of mine, MD sneered. As soon as MDA's words came out, the human cultivators were all furious. This MDA was simply making things difficult for others. MDA was an early-stage Lord of Creation, while Yuan was just the Lord of Profound Secrets. He actually had the face to say such shameless words. It was really too shameless. What? You don't dare? Scared? If you're scared, then don't grumble in front of me. A piece of trash like you has no right to accept my apology. My apology will only be given to cultivators stronger than me, MD said arrogantly, raising his head. Then let's fight. Chapter 2953. Disdain. Zhuowen's voice was very calm, like the surface of a deep well, without any ripples. However, these words were like a stone that had fallen into the water's surface, causing dense ripples. Everyone was in an uproar. Sun Qin, Xiang Puyu, and Xiaojin, the three magnates of the human clan, also looked at Zhuowen strangely, especially Xiaojin, whose face didn't look good. Although he knew that Zhuowen's strength was indeed extraordinary, he was still just the Lord of Mystery. The difference between him and the Lord of Creation was too great. If Yuan really was Sauron's murderer, he might still be able to tangle with MD. However, MDA had already proven that he wasn't Sauron's killer, so Xiaojin didn't think he would be MDA's match. If the two of them fought, Yuan would undoubtedly die. Moreover, even if Sauron really was killed, Xiaojin still didn't think highly of him. Sauron was only a peak Lord of Creation. Although he had a special bloodline, his battle prowess was extraordinary. If it was an ordinary early-stage Lord of Creation cultivator, they might not necessarily be Sauron's match. However, MD was also an elder of the merfolk race, and his bloodline wasn't weak either. Sauron was still slightly inferior to MDA. You mean you want to challenge MDA? The second elder of the Phoenix people looked at Zhuowen in surprise. He didn't understand. How could a mere human like the Lord of Mystery have the guts to challenge a third-step Dao validation expert? Moreover, he was an early-stage Lord of Creation expert at the second tier of the third step. Moreover, he was from a foreign race with a very powerful bloodline. Even the most talented holy maiden of the Phoenix people probably wouldn't dare to challenge an expert like MDA at the Lord of Mystery realm. However, I have a condition. MD must suppress his cultivation level to that of the Lord of Mystery realm and then fight me. If he wins, I won't pursue his previous apology and promise. Zhuowen's expression was calm, but he sighed inwardly. On the human side, he was just a wandering cultivator with no background. Although he had reached an agreement with Xiaojin, their relationship was very fragile. Xiaojin wasn't likely to take such a big risk to go against a terrifying expert like the second elder of the Phoenix people for him. If it were him, he wouldn't do that either, unless there was something wrong with Xiaojin's brain. Zhuowen knew that his foundation on the human side was shallow, so he didn't directly question MDA's reneging on his promise. He knew that would only make him look like a clown. It would be better to be more practical and directly challenge MDA and make him swear a heavenly oath. That way, MDA wouldn't dare to break his promise again. Who do you think you? Lord of Creation's trash. You don't even have the right to challenge me. MDA's of the Phoenix People Clan Lord of Creation. was MDA's of the Phoenix people Phoenix Mu's ancestor of creation. The second elder of the Phoenix clan looked on coldly. Although he believed that the human youth was courting death by challenging MDA, he also believed that the human youth was indeed not qualified to challenge MDA. The difference between the two was too great. With MDA's current status and strength, there was no benefit in accepting this kid's challenge, regardless of whether he won or lost. Zhuan didn't mind and calmly said, "Since you think I'm trash and you don't even dare to accept my challenge, then aren't you worse than trash?" MDA's face was gloomy. He coldly looked at Zhuan, his eyes containing fury. "Human, you're really courting death. Since you recklessly want to challenge me, I'll fulfill your wish." MDA slowly walked in front of Zhuan and looked down at Zhuan from above. MDA was a merman. He was more than 3 meters tall, much taller than Zhuan. "Sect Master, and is this kid really from your Yin and Yang divine sect? Why is he so brainless? He actually dares to challenge an expert like MDA." Senki Yin slightly frowned and said to An Xiaojin beside him with some displeasure. An Xiaojin's face reddened, and he said in a deep voice, "I don't know this kid very well. I only know that his name is Longwen. Speaking of which, I just met him. We're only in a cooperative relationship." "Just met him? This guy is a loose cultivator?" Senki Yin asked curiously. "Yes, although this kid's cultivation is very low, his physical strength is very powerful. He should have specially cultivated his physical body. Our Yin and Yang divine sect's disciple Chao Kangqing was easily defeated by him," and Xiaojin said. "Oh, Chao Kangqing was easily defeated by him? I remember that this Chao Kangqing is a genius second only to Yi Hanfei in your Yin and Yang divine sect. His cultivation is already at the early stage of the Lord of Creation, right?" Xiang Puyu interrupted in astonishment. "Yes, this kid is very powerful, so I reached an agreement with him to let this kid represent our Yin and Yang divine sect to enter the door of darkness." And Xiaojin nodded. He didn't mention that Zhuan had promised to bring back a bottle of ancestral shaman blood. This was because he thought that Zhuan was bragging. He didn't believe it himself. He had only agreed to cooperate with Zhuan and give him a spot to enter the door of darkness because of Zhuan's strength. "I see. Since this kid was able to defeat Chao Kangqing, his battle strength is indeed heaven-defying. However, he isn't Chao Kangqing. This is a Lord of Creation level alien. His battle strength is much stronger than an ordinary early-stage Lord of Creation level human cultivator. Even if this MDA suppresses his cultivation to Lord of Mysteries level, he's still much stronger than Chao Kangqing. Just the innate bloodline and physical body of the merfolk isn't something that human cultivators can deal with." Senki Yin shook his head, not optimistic about Zhuan's chances. In his opinion, Yun was simply courting death in this battle. It wasn't just Senki Yin's group. All the cultivators in the human camp felt that this was strange. Their thoughts were the same as Senki Yin's group. They felt that Zhuan was courting death. "Then swear a heavenly Tao oath first. If you lose, then you have to abide by the promise you made to me just now. If I win, I won't pursue the matter of you breaking the agreement," Zhuan said. MDA sneered. He cut open his thumb and dripped a drop of essence blood before swearing to the heavenly Tao. After swearing the heavenly Tao oath, MDA said, "This is a challenge you issued to me, so I accidentally killed you. I think this should be a normal thing." "You want to kill me?" Zhuan asked coldly. It's just killing an ant. I usually attack normally. If I attack too heavily, the ant won't be able to withstand it and dies. Isn't that normal?" MD sneered. "Sometimes, many ants can bite an elephant to death," Zhuan said indifferently. MDA's gaze turned cold. "Perhaps many ants can bite an elephant to death, but in front of me, no matter how many ants there are, there's still ants. They won't be able to make much of a splash. All right, since the two of you have decided to fight, let's make some space for them," the second elder of the Phoenix people said. Chapter 2954. Phoenix people's holy maiden MD sneered. "Don't worry. Even if my cultivation is suppressed to Lord Profound Theory's level, killing you will still be a piece of cake." The Phoenix people's second elder nodded at An Xiaojin. He had originally planned to let MDA suppress his own cultivation, but since Yuan had made the request, he didn't mind. And Xiaojin walked up to MDA and formed a seal with both hands. He tapped several of MDA's major acupoints, forcefully suppressing his cultivation to Lord Profound Theory's level. After doing all that, and Xiaojin looked deeply at Tun. When he walked to Zhuowen's side, he paused and patted Zhuowen's shoulder. MDA isn't simple. Be careful. If you really aren't a match for him, admit defeat early. That way, you won't lose your life. Secmasterin, don't worry. The one who will lose my life won't be me, but MDA, Zhuowen said calmly. And Xiaojin couldn't help but shake his head. Even now, Zhuowen was still bragging. There was no saving him. Thinking of this, and Xiaojin didn't say anything else. He brushed past Yuan. In his opinion, Yun was dead for sure in this battle. There was no point in him saying anything more. After Xiaojin left, the human and foreign races consciously left a large empty space. Zhuowen and MDA's battlefield happened to be separated by the door of darkness from the middle, like a dividing line. Zhuowen and MDA faced each other from a distance. Zhuowen's gaze was calm, while MDA's face was full of disdain and contempt. Suddenly, there was a commotion on the outsider's side, attracting the attention of many people. Even Zhuowen and MDA were attracted by the commotion. A beautiful figure slowly walked out from the group of outsiders. Wherever this figure passed, the foreign beings would consciously open up a path for him, and their gazes toward this figure were filled with reverence and admiration. It's the Saintess. I didn't expect the Saintess of the Phoenix people to come out. It seems like even the Saintess is interested in this battle. Ever since the Saintess followed the Phoenix people to the door of darkness, she rarely appears. It's really rare for her to appear today. Could it be because of the merfolk's MDA? That should be the case. I heard that the merfolk race and the Phoenix people have started working closely together. Now that MDA is fighting someone, the Saintess should come out and give him some face. Discussions broke out among the outsiders. In the end, the Holy Maiden walked to the front of the group of outsiders and came to the side of the second elder of the Phoenix people. Zhuowen's eyes fell on the Saintess, and his heart thumped wildly. The Saintess was wearing a fiery red dress and a phoenix crown on her head. She was surrounded by the shadow of a phoenix, giving her a graceful and luxurious temperament. Her arms were exposed, and they were as white as snow. The only flaw was that she was wearing a veil on her face, so her true appearance could not be seen clearly. This veil was not ordinary. It could actually block a cultivator's divine sense. The moment the Saintess appeared, the cultivators present used their divine sense to check the Saintess' true appearance, but in the end, they all found that it was a waste of effort. However, the moment Zhuowen's gaze fell on the Saintess' beautiful eyes, his expression suddenly froze. His face turned pale, and there was doubt and confusion in his eyes. This was because he found that those eyes were filled with an eternal coldness. There was no warmth in them. Moreover, Yun was sure that those eyes definitely did not belong to Mu Chenxue. He had been with Mu Chenxue for many years. He knew Mu Chenxue's eyes, every movement, and every expression clearly. However, the eyes of the Phoenix people's Saintess in front of him did not give him a familiar feeling. Rather, it gave him a completely unfamiliar feeling. Whether it was her eyes, her exposed pure white forehead, or her white jade-like hands, they didn't give Zhuowen the same sense of familiarity as he had in the past. This was a completely unfamiliar woman. This was Zhuowen's first impression of the Saintess. She's not Chenxue. Zhuowen's pupils shrank, feeling that this was unbelievable. When Kong Shi and the three elders of the Phoenix people came to take away Mu Chenxue, they had clearly said that Mu Chenxue had the 99 Phoenix body, so her physique and bloodline were very special. They had also promised that with this physique, Mu Chenxue would definitely become the Phoenix people's Saintess in the future. Before Zhuowen came to the door of darkness, he had heard that the Phoenix people's Saintess had come, so he thought that Mu Chenxue had come. Looking at it now, his expectations had completely disappeared. This was because the Saintess in front of him was not Mu Chenxue, but rather a girl he did not recognize. Perhaps Chenxue's cultivation is too low and hasn't reached the Saintess requirements. This should be the previous Saintess. Zhuan secretly gave this explanation in his heart. Mu Chenxue had left the 8 heavens domains for the Phoenix people in the Great Desolate Realm. It had not been that long, so it was impossible for her cultivation to increase that quickly. Naturally, it was impossible for her to become the new saintess this quickly. Thinking that the Phoenix people's saintess was not Mu Chenxue, Yuan instantly lost all interest. It seems like I should go to the Great Desolate Realm when I have time. I wonder how Chenxue is doing in the Phoenix people. Zhuan thought to himself. Normally, when a human entered the Great Desolate Realm, they would immediately be besieged by the pagans. After all, the aura of a human was too different for the pagans. No matter how powerful the concealment technique was, the non-humankind would be able to identify the aura of a human being. Therefore, even Sun Qin and the others, who were at the early stage of the sky-reaching realm, didn't dare to enter the untainted heaven realm alone. However, Yuan was different. His clone's original body was the king of the devouring clan. Although he had cultivated the Pangu's sacred body and his body had already surpassed the devouring clans, his original body was still a member of the devouring clan. It was much easier for him to enter the Great Desolate Realm compared to other human beings. As long as he put his original body into the Great World and hid the Great World in the deepest part of his clone's body, it would become the devouring clan's inner world. Then his clone would be a real member of the devouring clan. Basically, no pagans would suspect his identity when he entered the Great Desolate Realm. The saintess walked to the side of the 2 elders. Her beautiful eyes looked at Zhuan and MDA, who were facing each other in the open space. Clearly, the saintess did not know what was going on with the 2 people facing each other in the open space. However, the 2 elders said something to the saintess in a low voice. Her beautiful eyes flashed with understanding. Clearly, the 2 elders were explaining the duel between Zhuan and MDA to her. In particular, the holy maiden looked at Zhuan with a look of interest. She was very curious. This human cultivator was merely the Lord of Profound Secrets. How could he have the courage to challenge an early creator lord like MD? The difference between the 2 was not small. MD, who was standing in front of Zhuan, bowed respectfully when he saw the saintess appear. This was the saintess of the Phoenix people. Her status was one of the highest among the Phoenix people. In the future, she would be a peerless figure who would control the entire Phoenix people. Her potential was limitless. Chapter 2955. Give you a 5-move handicap. After bowing, MD turned around and looked down at Zhuan, his eyes full of arrogance. Since the holy maiden has personally come to watch the battle, I'll give you a chance to attack. I'll stand here and give you a 3-move handicap. I'll only defend and not attack. After 3 moves, I'll take the initiative to attack. At that time, you'd better behave yourself. MDA stood proudly. He planned to perform well in front of the holy maiden. If he could gain her appreciation, it would be of great benefit to his future development in the merfolk race. Your cultivation has been suppressed to the same level as me, the Lord of Profound Secrets, and you still plan to give me a 3-move handicap? Zhuan had a strange look in his eyes. This MDA really didn't take him seriously and actually planned to give him a 3-move handicap. With Zhuowen's current strength, even if MDA's cultivation hadn't been suppressed to the Lord of Profound Secrets level, MDA giving him a 3-move handicap was just courting death. What? 3 moves aren't enough? If that's not enough, I can give you a 5-move handicap. I don't mind letting you live for 5 more moves. You'll be a dead man soon anyway. MD put his hands behind his back and raised his chin slightly. His gaze was deep as he spoke in a very pretentious manner. Zhuan chuckled and didn't say much. Instead, he took a step forward and rushed towards MDA. Since this MD didn't know what was good for him, he wouldn't be polite. With MDA's cultivation being suppressed, he was just trash in front of Zhuan. MD silently looked at Zhuan, especially when the aura that erupted from Zhuan was only the Lord of Profound Secrets. His gaze was full of contempt. With such a trashy cultivation, even if he suppressed it, he could still destroy it with a single move. This MDA is really too much. He's fighting Long Wen as a creation lord. Even if he's suppressing his cultivation, he's already grasped a higher level of heavenly Tao energy and techniques. Longwen is already at a disadvantage. Now, this guy is even using such a method to humiliate Longwen. This is indirectly humiliating us human cultivators. The human race cultivators were all filled with righteous indignation. During the discussion just now, they already knew Zhuowen's alias. They all knew that this arrogant young man was called Longwen. Although they thought that this young man was foolish and had a death wish, he was still a human cultivator. Now, he was going to be beaten to death in front of everyone. Moreover, he was beaten to death in a way that allowed him to make a move. They couldn't help but feel a little sad for him. As expected, he's just the Lord of Profound Secrets. And here I was wondering how powerful he would be. The second elder shook his head and muttered to himself, somewhat speechless. As soon as Zhuowen made his move, he only used the power of his main body. Although this kind of power was indeed stronger than ordinary Lord Xuanji's, compared to MDA's, the gap was a little too big. The crowd didn't need to continue watching to guess that Zhuowen's fate would be very miserable. MD laughed maniacally, thinking that this fellow was indeed a trash. Zhuowen's movements were basically seen through by him. In his eyes, this was simply moving in slow motion. Boom! Zhuowen already swept in front of MD, the 5 fingers of his right hand forming a fist, whistling toward his face. I said you're trash. You're indeed trash. This move was completely seen through by me. What are you still fighting with me for? MD shook his head and sneered. His right hand formed a palm and casually extended, welcoming Zhuowen's right fist that rumbled over. Bang! Zhuowen's right fist was very easily grasped by MDA's palm. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they could not help shaking their heads. MDA's realm was much higher than Zhuowen's. Even if his cultivation was suppressed to the same level as Zhuowen, the latter was also completely unable to be MDA's match. I thought that this boy wouldn't be simple. Didn't expect that he's just at this level. After 5 moves, MD can finish this boy off in 1 move. The second elder shook his head and said with a cold smile. Although the holy maiden standing beside the second elder did not speak, it could be seen from her expression that she lacked interest in this battle. After all, the disparity between the two was too great. Gotcha! Just when everyone thought that after grasping Zhuowen's fist, MDA would directly tear off Zhuowen's right hand in a spurt of energy, the following scene left everyone dumbstruck. They saw a sparkling radiance suddenly erupt from Zhuowen's fist, and a terrifying aura that could devour heaven and earth suddenly erupted. MD, who originally did not care, suddenly narrowed his eyes as he felt an unprecedented sense of crisis. Soon after, he felt that the strength of the fist that he had clenched had undergone a qualitative change. It was as if an unreachable mountain had landed on his right hand. Gotcha! The crisp sound of bones breaking resounded as MDA's right arm was directly twisted in half by this punch. The forearm bone pierced through his elbow, while the backbone pierced through his shoulder. Bloody mist burst out from MDA's right arm, looking very terrifying. MD let out a blood-curdling scream and immediately held his crippled right arm. Just as he was about to retreat, a palm instantly appeared on his cheek and fiercely slapped him. With a slap, MD was directly slapped to the ground, his head fiercely colliding with the ground, causing the earth to violently tremble. A large crater was directly smashed into MDA's head, while the right side of MDA's face swelled up, a tragic sight to behold. This scene happened too quickly, and before anyone could react, MDA's right hand was crippled, and his face was fiercely slapped. Just what kind of situation was this? Although MDA said that he would let Su Chen have 5 moves, this was a bit too much. Zhuowen slapped MDA to the ground, but did not continue to attack. Instead, he faintly smiled and said, "Elder MD is really courteous. You said you would let me have 1 move, and you really did. Moreover, you even took the initiative to let me slap your face. I'm really overwhelmed by your favor." Zhuowen's voice caused all the stunned cultivators to return to their senses. They all looked at Zhuowen strangely. Although this kid gave a reasonable explanation for the face slapping just now, they would not be so foolish as to actually believe his words. Although MDA said that he would let Su Chen have 1 move, it was not to the extent of letting him stretch his face out to be slapped. If MD really did let Suchin have one move willingly, then this MDA was definitely a retard. Elder MD, still not getting up? Didn't you say that you would let me have 5 moves? You already let me have 1 move, there are still 4 left. Zhuowen said indifferently. MDA stood up, his gaze gloomy as he looked at Zhuowen, his heart alarmed. Just now, that burst of power that Zhuowen suddenly erupted with was absolutely not something that the Lord of Profound Secrets could possess. Moreover, he discovered that it seemed to be this kid's physical strength. Thinking of this possibility, he felt incredulous. Although the human race also had body refinement cultivators, due to their congenital defects, there were no formidable powerhouses in the area of body refinement at all. Furthermore, their foreign race had an innate advantage. Even if they did not specialize in body refinement, their physical strength was still much stronger than human cultivators. However, this human in front of him was actually able to erupt with such terrifying physical strength just now. He even began to wonder if this guy was really human. Elder MD, it's time for the second move. Stand where you are and don't move. I'm going to attack. While MDA was still in a daze, Zhuowen's voice rang out again. Then, a terrifying gust of wind attacked again. The air exploded, as if the entire space was being torn apart. Chapter 2956. Defeat. Kacha. MDA's undamaged left hand abruptly formed a seal, before suddenly blasting it out. Instantly, a boundless ocean condensed around him. Wave after wave surged up, each wave higher than the previous one. It was a terrifying sight. Wave folding divine fist. MDA growled and punched out. The fist energy formed a terrifying wave that was higher than the previous one. At this moment, Zhuowen's figure had already appeared in front of MDA. In front of the endless waves, Zhuowen's figure was so small and humble, as if he would be swept away by the huge waves at any time and turn to ashes. However, Zhuowen's expression was as calm as water. In the face of such a terrifying wave, he only punched out. If MDA's cultivation was still at the early stage of the Lord of Creation, the power of this move would be very terrifying. With Zhuowen's current strength, he would probably have to pay a heavy price if he wanted to take it head-on. Unfortunately, MDA's cultivation had now been forcibly suppressed to the level of the Lord of Mystery by Xiaojing. Even if MDA could skillfully use the power of the heavenly Tao and could easily deal with the ordinary Lord of Mystery, Zhuowen couldn't. On the contrary, MDA's battle with Yun was simply asking for trouble. After all, the Pangu sacred body was so terrifying that it was basically invincible within the same realm. As long as MDA suppressed his realm to the same level as Yun, he would be looking for a beating. Bang, bang, bang. Zhuowen punched out again and again. Every punch contained extremely terrifying heavenly Tao energy, breaking through the surging waves one after another. Rip. The sound of cloth tearing resounded. Soon after, Yun broke through the last wave. Like a god descending to the mortal world, he descended in front of MD. His right fist blasted out like lightning, smashing directly into MDA's left arm. Kacha! MDA's left arm was directly blasted into a bloody mist. MD screamed and fell heavily to the ground. His face was ferocious and pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. The second move. There are still 3 moves left. Before MDA could struggle to get up, he heard Zhuowen's cold voice again. Then, a gust of wind swept over, causing MDA's expression to change greatly. Slap. As soon as he raised his head, he saw a palm suddenly whistling towards his face. With a slap, MDA's head was slapped into the ground. The fourth move. Zhuowen didn't give MDA any time to catch his breath. Zhuowen MDA's right kick. MDA was Zhuowen's MDA's? He MDA's in the air. Zhuowen's his right hand. Zhuowen's right. This slap was too loud, like a thunderclap. MDA's right cheek was slapped open, and he spat out broken teeth mixed with blood. He looked very miserable. That's enough. Is God is dididididifwas. What kind of freak is this? He's clearly just the Lord of Profound Secrets. Why does he have such terrifying battle strength? Especially the terrifying physical strength displayed by this person. He's much stronger than me. Is he a foreign race, or am I a foreign race? Thinking of this, MD felt as if thousands of mud horses were galloping over his head. He began to suspect whether he was a foreign race or the human cultivator in front of him was. Everyone at the scene was stunned. What the fuck was going on? Didn't MDA say that Longwen was trash? Didn't they agree to let him have 5 moves and then eliminate him in 1 move? Now he was beaten like a dog. Is this the so-called trash MDA was talking about? Elder MDA's meaning is that you admit defeat? Joan slowly walked up to MD and looked down at MD, who was lying limp on the ground and twitching all over. MDA's eyes flickered. Finally, he nodded. I admit defeat. Since you admit defeat, then keep your promise. Hand over the spirit ring in your hand. Joan spread out his right hand and looked coldly at MD. Humiliation flashed in MDA's eyes, but he was helpless. His cultivation was suppressed by Xiaojin's power, and he could only display the Lord of Profound Secrets' power. In his current state, he was no match for Zhuan at all unless he could break through Xiaojin's power. But he knew that was impossible. And Xiaojin was an early-stage Lord of Profound Secrets. He was much stronger than him. If he wanted to break through Xiaojin's power, wouldn't that be courting death? Sighing, MD could only take off the spirit ring in his hand and throw it to Zhuan. His heart was filled with pain. There were many good things in his spirit ring, including his many years of savings. How could he not feel pain when he gave it to Zhuan just like that? Putting away MDA's spirit ring, Zhuan nodded in satisfaction. Shortly after, he continued, in addition, you need to kneel in front of me, kowtow 3 times and 9 times, call me grandfather, and apologize to me. Hearing that, MDA's face turned ashen. If he really did as Zhuan said, it would be too humiliating. Once he did that, he would lose all his face. Moreover, he could imagine that he would become the laughingstock of the merfolk and foreign races in the future. What? Elder MDA is unwilling? I won't force you if you're unwilling. But I remember you swore to the heavenly Tao, right? If you don't abide by it, I'm afraid you know what punishment will follow without me saying, Zhuan said with a faint smile. MDA's face was gloomy. What Zhuan said was right. Because he didn't care about this kid, he easily swore to the heavenly Tao. Even if this kid didn't pursue the matter, the heavenly Tao wouldn't ignore it. Once he violated the heavenly Tao's oath, the heavenly Tao would send down punishment, and his life would be in danger. Thinking up to there, MD took a deep breath and very straightforwardly knelt in front of Zhuan. Shortly after, he kowtowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times, solemnly apologizing to Zhuan. After doing all that, MD quickly left the human camp. He really didn't have the face to stay here. After MD left, the human camp was quiet for a moment before a tsunami of cheers rang out. Everyone looked at Zhuo Wen's figure with fervent gazes. They never thought that this battle with such a huge disparity in strength would end in such an unexpected result. In the beginning, who would have thought that a mere human cultivator like the Lord of Profundity would be able to defeat a foreign race cultivator like the Lord of Creation? Although this was also because MDA's cultivation had been forcefully suppressed, even so, MDA's strength still wouldn't be much weaker. He was probably comparable to an ordinary Lord of Creation. But even so, MDA was still defeated by this kid. It was clear just how terrifying this kid's strength was. Chapter 2957. Yi Hanfei, the second elder of the Phoenix people, frowned slightly before shaking his head. I'm not sure about this person either. I don't think there's someone like him among the younger generation of the Tao Palace level organizations in the Xianmi Heavenly region. He seems to have appeared out of nowhere. Looks like he's an independent cultivator. He's quite powerful. If I'm not wrong, he did not use his full strength in his battle with Elder MDA. He's most likely the one who killed Sauron, the Saintess said nonchalantly. Saintess, you think Sauron was really killed by him? The second elder asked in surprise. The Saintess nodded. MDA's senses towards the mermaid seal are usually correct. Since he sensed the presence of the mermaid seal from this person, it means that the mermaid seal definitely exists on this person. However, why was the mermaid seal not verified in the end? He must have used some special method to temporarily conceal the presence of the mermaid seal. During the verification process, the mermaid's seal did not appear. The second elder narrowed his eyes and said softly, "Saintess, if Sauron really was killed by this person, we shouldn't let him go. Right now, the Merfolk clan has close ties with us Phoenix people. We can't just ignore Sauron's death." However, the Saintess shook her head. "There's no need for us to concern ourselves with this matter. Even MDA was unable to verify the presence of the mermaid's seal on this person, so it's even more impossible for us to do so. Are we supposed to confirm that this person is the murderer without any evidence? That's clearly unrealistic. Furthermore, it'll only incur the disgust of human cultivators. At that time, it'll even lead to a war between humans and foreign races. It's very unwise for both sides to stand up before entering the door of darkness." The second elder nodded along with the Saintess analysis. He believed that the Saintess analysis was on point. "I think this person will be entering the door of darkness this time as well. If I encounter this person in the door of darkness, I'll kill him. It'll be an explanation to MDA and the Merfolk clan," continued the Saintess. At this moment, Zhuan had completely become the focus of everyone's attention in the human camp. Everyone stared at Zhuan passionately. Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and Shaojin personally came before Zhuan. Their eyes were filled with amazement. They didn't expect the final battle to be reversed like this. This was too inconceivable. And Shaojin, in particular, was filled with excitement. The strength Zhuan had just displayed was even more powerful and terrifying than when he had taught Chao Kongqing a lesson. He was probably comparable to the most powerful person in the Yin and Yang divine sect, Yi Hanfei. Since such a genius had entered the Dark Door on behalf of the Yin and Yang divine sect, he must have gained a lot. He was full of expectations for Zhuan's promise that he would bring out a bottle of ancestral witch blood. This was because he vaguely felt that Zhuan was not lying. It was very likely that this person really had the ability to do so. After Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu praised Zhuan, they returned to their respective teams. The members of the Yin and Yang divine sect surrounded Zhuan one after another. They were as excited as sparrows, asking Zhuan all kinds of questions, as if Zhuan was some celebrity idol. Zhuan was a little speechless at everyone's enthusiasm. He could only laugh dryly and casually answer the questions raised by everyone. Chao Kongqing looked at Zhuan, who was surrounded by people, and his gaze became even gloomier. The flames of jealousy in his heart burned fiercely. Xing Xinglan's expression was also not very good. Just now, he was hoping that Zhuan would be beaten to death by MDA. Now, it seemed that this was completely wishful thinking. Just as everyone's eyes were focused on Zhuan, several streams of light suddenly swept over from outside the dark door. Powerful auras were like black clouds pressing down on a mountain, enveloping and crushing down. The streams of light converged, revealing 5 figures. These 5 figures were 4 men and 1 woman. Among the 5 figures, the most eye-catching one was the only woman. This woman looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. She had a well-proportioned figure, especially a pair of slender jade legs, which were very eye-catching. Behind this woman, there was an old man who had hidden his strength. The combination of these 2 people happened to be Zhongli Hao Yen and Elder Zhong, who had just appeared in the Starry Sky Plaza. In addition to these 2 people, Zhuan knew 2 of the 3 people. One of them was a young man with a cool expression, Yi Qidong, a genius of the Eastern Dao region's Dao Palace level force, Scarlet Mountain Villa. He was also the leader of the 5 great monsters of the host region and ranked 2nd on the Starry Sky contribution list. The other person was also one of the 5 great monsters of the host region, Jiang Qixing. He was the number 1 genius of the Dao Palace level force chasing Sun Temple. However, compared to a monster like Yi Qidong, he was still lacking by quite a bit. The last man looked very young. He was a typical pretty boy, dressed in white, and was very pretentious. However, most of this white-robed man's attention was placed on Zhongli Hao Yen. His eyes did not conceal his admiration for Zhongli Hao Yen. Zhongli Hao Yen also noticed the admiration in the white-robed man's eyes. Her beautiful eyes were filled with indifference, and she ignored the white-robed man. "Look, Zhongli Hao Yen is also here. Yi Qidong and Yi Hanfei are also here. I didn't expect the top 3 geniuses of the Starry Sky contribution list to come to the door of darkness at the same time. The people in the human race camp were in an uproar after discovering the true identity of these 5 streams of light. Zhuan also finally found out the identity of the pretentious white-robed man from the crowd's discussion. He was actually the #1 genius of the Yin and Yang divine sect, Yi Hanfei, who was also ranked 3rd on the Starry Sky contribution list. After Zhongli Haoyan arrived at the door of darkness, she did not even greet them before landing in the team representing Heavenly Temple. The Temple Master of Heavenly Temple did not come this time. The strongest person should be the old man behind Zhongli Haoyan. Although this old man's aura was completely concealed and Zhuowen couldn't see his true cultivation level, Zhuowen could faintly guess that this old man was at least a half-step Heaven Conduit Lord, perhaps even an early Heaven Conduit Lord. Heavenly Temple was the strongest Dao Palace faction in the North Dao region. It was said that there was more than one Skyrend master in it. It was a very mysterious and powerful faction, and it was faintly showing signs of becoming the strongest Dao Palace faction in the entire Xianmi Sky region. After Zhongli Haoyan returned to the team, Yi Qidong and Jiang Qixing also returned to their respective teams. However, Yi Hanfei looked at Zhongli Haoyan's back with some reluctance before returning to the team representing the Yin and Yang divine sect. Hanfei greets the sect master. Yi Hanfei bowed respectfully to Xiaojin as soon as he landed. And Xiaojin nodded and looked Yi Hanfei up and down. Your cultivation has improved again. It seems that you have exchanged all the points in the Starry Sky token for cultivation, right? Yi Hanfei cupped his hands and said, yes, the door of darkness is full of danger this time. Only with greater strength will we have greater competitiveness. Hanfei believes that exchanging points for cultivation is much more practical than exchanging for other things. It's good that you have such a way of thinking. If I'm not wrong, your cultivation should have already reached the late-stage Genesis stage. Not bad, not bad. And Xiaojin could not help but nod, his eyes full of praise. Chapter 2958. Shock. By the way, Sect Master, this time I came from the Starry Sky Tower with Hao Yen and the others. When we were about to enter the Door of Darkness, we found traces of a terrible fight near the Door of Darkness, Yi Hanfei suddenly said. Traces of a fight? Now is a critical time. Why would someone dare to risk universal condemnation and fight near the Door of Darkness? Do they not want to enter the Door of Darkness? And Xiaojin asked with a gloomy face. They are not people from our temporary alliance, but Blood Prison assassins. And this time, Blood Prison sent 108 elite assassins and arranged a blood-splashing limitless array in the void dimension near the Door of Darkness. Yi Hanfei continued, blood-splashing limitless array? And Xiaojin's face changed slightly. The blood-splashing limitless array was a taboo technique of Blood Prison. It was impossible for him not to have heard of it. When Yi Hanfei mentioned the Blood Prison assassins in the void dimension, Xing Xinglan and Yao Xiangjuan's faces changed, and they looked at Zhuowen not far away. They knew very well that the purpose of the group of Blood Prison assassins was to kill Zhuowen, and they did not hesitate to use the blood-splashing limitless array. However, Zhuowen was lucky enough to escape in the end. They had to admit that Zhuowen was indeed a monster. However, the two of them were also worried that Zhuowen's presence in the Yin and Yang divine sect would attract the attention of the Blood Prison assassin hidden in the void dimension and affect them. They were placed in the outside world by Zhuowen and their divine senses were shielded, so they did not know that all the Blood Prison assassins, including the 3 kills, had been killed by Zhuowen. They thought that Zhuowen had escaped by luck. Blood Prison is really generous. They even arranged a blood-splashing limitless array. It seems that the target this time is not simple. I wonder who the Blood Prison is targeting? By the way, Hanfei, did you see who the Blood Prison killed? And Xiaojin looked at Yi Hanfei and asked. Yi Hanfei shook his head and said with a strange look in his eyes, I don't know who the Blood Prison's target is. However, by the time I arrived at the void dimension, all 108 Blood Prison assassins had fallen. The 108 Blood Prison killers who arranged the blood-splattering limitless array were all dead? And Xiaojin was shocked. Not only that, but even the blood prison's third killer is dead. I personally found his corpse in the void dimension. At this point, Yi Hanfei's eyes were filled with admiration as he continued. Even under the pincer attack of the Sanguine Limitless formation and the triple kill formation, he was still able to come out unscathed. Moreover, he was able to turn the tables and kill them all. This person is definitely a true powerhouse and a role model for our generation. And Xiao Jin also nodded in agreement. The blood-splattering limitless array was too famous. Back then, the blood prison had relied on this array formation to kill an early-stage heaven-reaching master powerhouse, shocking the entire Xianmi heavenly domain. Although the blood prison had declined and couldn't afford to use the 108 creature-level assassins of the past to set up a formation, an eternal overlord assassin was still enough to kill a creature-level powerhouse. And the cultivator who broke this blood-splattering limitless formation must have a cultivation base that reached the heavens and had terrifying strength. He was also quite curious about this kind of expert. In the team, Xing Xinglan and Yao Xiangjuan's gazes became extremely strange, and they couldn't help but look at Zhuowen not far away. Both of them knew that the purpose of the blood prison's assassins setting up the blood-splattering limitless formation was to kill this person. Now that they learned that the blood prison's assassins had been completely wiped out, and even the triple kill had fallen, they couldn't help but wonder if the person who broke the blood-splattering limitless formation and killed the triple kill was Zhuowen. This was truly inconceivable. How could Zhuowen's strength be so formidable? Damn, fortunately, I didn't provoke this fiend after I came back. If this guy really had the strength to destroy the blood-splattering limitless formation and the triple kill, I would have just brought about my own destruction by provoking him. Xing Xinglan muttered in his heart, hoping for a fluke. On the other hand, Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were full of complex emotions. She also didn't expect this person's strength to be so terrifying. And for some reason, every time she looked at this dragon character, she always felt a sense of familiarity from it. This sense of familiarity was inexplicable. But who is this person? Only then did Yi Hanfei notice that there was a stranger in the group. He glanced at Zhuowen, his eyes full of doubt. Hanfei, this person is Long Wen. He's working with our Yin and Yang divine sect, and Xiao Jin calmly introduced Zhuowen to Yi Hanfei, including the matter of Zhuowen teaching Chao Kangqing a lesson, as well as the tyrannical mermaid MD. But the Lord of Profound Secrets is actually so powerful? Yi Hanfei looked up and down at Zhuowen, his eyes revealing a look of surprise. He didn't expect the Lord of Profound Secrets to have such terrifying strength. This simply defied common sense. However, he didn't doubt in Xiao Jin's words. After all, Xiao Jin was the sect master of the Yin and Yang divine sect. Every word he said was worth 1,000 gold. He wouldn't speak carelessly. Your strength is not bad. After the door of darkness opens, just follow me. Everything must be under my command, understand? Yi Hanfei arrived in front of Zhuowen, his gaze arrogant as he said indifferently. Although Xiao Jin emphasized that Zhuowen's strength was very powerful when introducing him, Yi Hanfei didn't care too much. Although Chao Kangqing was the number 2 genius of the Yin and Yang divine sect, the gap between them was seriously too great. He didn't take it to heart. Meanwhile, although MDA was stronger than him, if he similarly suppressed his cultivation to the Lord of Profound Secrets, he could similarly defeat him easily. Therefore, although Zhuowen's 2 battles were not bad in his view, it wasn't enough to make him pay special attention. Perhaps you don't understand. I'm only working with your sect master, not you. Letting you command me, thinking too much. Zhuowen said with a cold smile. Yi Hanfei's eyes narrowed, his voice becoming very cold as he said, You dare to disobey me? Disobey you? Do you have the qualifications to make me disobey? Zhuowen retorted sarcastically. Then he looked at Xiao Jin and said, Sect master, I'll be separated from your group as soon as I enter the door of darkness. I don't plan to follow your group. But don't worry, I've always remembered the promise I made to you. I'll definitely help you complete it. With that, Zhuowen sat down cross-legged on the cushion at the side and didn't say anything else. Yi Hanfei's face was gloomy, but he didn't act out in the end. However, his gaze toward Zhuowen was very unfriendly. Not long after Zhuowen sat down, he smelled a fragrance. Then he opened his eyes and discovered that Yao Xiangjuan had appeared before him at some point. "Miss Yao, is there something you need?" Zhuowen said with a smile. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes flickered. She suddenly said, "Longwen, actually, your name is very similar to the name of an old friend of mine. However, your auras and appearances are completely different." Chapter 2959. Moses. Yao Xiangjuan couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when she saw Zhuowen deny it. She had actually thought of Zhuowen. She remembered that Zhuowen had also used the alias Longwen. The more she looked at Longwen, the more familiar she found him. She had wanted to ask if this person was also Zhuowen. But now, it seemed that she had been overthinking things. Although she knew that Zhuowen was very talented and had always been ahead of her, she clearly didn't think that Zhuowen's improvement would be so terrifying that he could reach Longwen's heaven-defying level. Since she had already confirmed that the youth before her wasn't Zhuowen, Yao Xiangjuan didn't have too much hope for him. Yao Xiangjuan's gaze was solemn as she said to Zhuowen in a deep voice, "Longwen, you have to be careful of Yi Hanfei. Don't be fooled by his refined appearance. He's extremely petty and will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Moreover, he hates people who go against him the most. You contradicted him just now, so he probably has his eyes on you. When we enter the door of darkness, he will probably harm you." Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "If he really wants to deal with me, then he can bring it on. I really won't be afraid." In truth, Zhuowen really didn't think much of Yi Hanfei. Perhaps Yi Hanfei's battle prowess was very terrifying, but in his opinion, Yi Hanfei's battle prowess was at most equivalent to the early-stage Lord of Creation's battle prowess. Zhuowen had even killed an early-stage Lord of Creation before. Would he be afraid of Yi Hanfei? Yao Xiangjuan shook her head inwardly when she saw how conceited Zhuowen was, but she didn't try to persuade him. She knew that with Longwen's strength, he was definitely an extremely arrogant person. He had blind confidence in his own strength, so it would be strange if he listened to her advice. "Miss Yao, after we enter the door of darkness, if you follow me, I can guarantee that you will quickly break through the shackles of your current cultivation. Moreover, I will bring you many opportunities," Zhuowen suddenly said to Yao Xiangjuan with a grin. Yao Xiangjuan looked at Zhuowen's smile. She didn't know why, even though she was clearly rejecting him in her heart, her mouth unexpectedly agreed. Then it settled. Zhuowen smiled and sat cross-legged on the futon with his eyes closed. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. She took a deep look at Zhuowen, but didn't say anything as she returned to her seat. The interaction between Yao Xiangjuan and Zhuowen was naturally seen by Yi Hanfei, who was not far away. Yi Hanfei's expression did not look good. Yao Xiangjuan was the most beautiful female cultivator in the Yin and Yang divine sect. In terms of appearance, even Zhongli Haoyan was slightly inferior. She was a true beauty. Yi Hanfei had tried to seduce Yao Xiangjuan many times, but Yao Xiangjuan's attitude towards him was always lukewarm. In the end, he left it at that and shifted his target to Zhongli Haoyan. Unfortunately, Zhongli Haoyan did not give him any face either. Now, Yao Xiangjuan, who had rejected him in the past, was actually so close to Longwen. Moreover, the two of them seemed to be chatting happily. The two of them seemed to be getting along very well. Yao Xiangjuan had never spoken so much to him before. Thinking of this, Yi Hanfei was even more displeased with Zhuowen. He wished he could rush up and give this arrogant boy a good beating. "Senior brother Yi, this boy is really hateful. Not only did he beat me up as soon as he joined the team, but he also disobeyed your orders. What's more hateful is that he actually seduced junior sister Yao. This boy is simply harboring unfathomable motives. You have to be careful." Chao Kangxing, who was beside Yi Hanfei, said fiercely. "Don't mess around in the door of darkness this time. Let's find the corpse of Grand Wizard Gonggong first. As for this boy, it won't be too late to teach him a lesson then." Yi Hanfei scolded in a low voice. Although Yi Hanfei was very displeased with Zhuowen, he knew his limits. The purpose of entering the door of darkness this time was not to cause internal strife, but to try his best to find good things in the door of darkness, especially the corpse of Grand Wizard Gonggong. Chao Kangxing nodded submissively and did not dare to disobey Yi Hanfei's words. In the following period of time, many figures from both the human clan and the alien clan arrived one after another. Most of them were young genius experts summoned by various forces and races. During this period, Yuan kept a low profile. Most of the time, he sat cross-legged in the team of the Yin and Yang divine sect. Of course, Yuan was not really cultivating. Instead, he was silently observing the young talents from both the human clan and the alien clan. After some observation, Yuan secretly shook his head because he found that the overall strength of the young talents from the alien clan was much stronger than that of the human clan. Moreover, it was not just a little stronger, but much stronger. Most of the young talents from the alien clan who had come this time were from the 10 great races of the primitive heaven realm. 5 of the 10 great races had come this time. Among them were the Phoenix people, the Merman clan, the Space-Time Beast clan, the Black Tiger clan, and the Dragon clan. In addition to these 5 races, there were many other races among the alien clan. However, these races could only be considered above average in the primitive heaven realm. Compared to the 10 great races, they were like heaven and earth. Moreover, Yuan discovered that after Sauron of the Merman clan was killed, the Merman clan had sent another young genius from the Merman clan. This genius from the Merman clan was even more famous than Sauron. He was a genius that the Merman clan had truly nurtured. His name was Moses. Moses' cultivation was much stronger than Sauron's. Although he had not broken through to the Lord of Creation, the second major realm of the third step of Tao validation, he was already a half-step Lord of Creation. Moreover, he had a special bloodline that was even more powerful than Sauron's. Sauron's status in the Merman clan was very high, but compared to Moses, he was still lacking. After all, his bloodline and cultivation were inferior. It was natural that his status was lower than Moses. When Moses arrived in front of the door of darkness, he saw MDA, who had been beaten up beyond recognition. He frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "MD, you sent a message saying that Sauron was killed by someone. And what happened to you? Who beat you up? Lord Moses, you're finally here. Actually, it's like this." MD scowled miserably and began to describe what had happened to Moses, including how he had been tricked by Long Wen. "You're right. I indeed sensed the aura of the Merman seal curse in the human camp. Your senses should be correct. However, how did that fellow avoid the verification of your essence blood? The Merman seal curse is directly planted in the trajectory of a cultivator's fate, and the trajectory of fate is fixed. It's impossible to arbitrarily change or change it. This child can avoid the verification of your essence blood. Could it be that he can control the trajectory of fate?" Moses's gaze was calm as he began to analyze. However, the more he analyzed, the more puzzled he became. Chapter 2960. Centering the Door of Darkness. Lord Moses, perhaps this child has grasped the secret technique of the trajectory of fate. MDA said cautiously. Moses's eyes shone brightly. His gaze swept past the many foreign races and landed on the youth in the Heaven and Earth Divine Sex team. "I'm afraid this child has many secrets. This is really interesting. After entering the door of darkness, I intend to dig out his secrets," Moses said calmly. MD lowered his head, and a trace of pleasure flashed through his eyes. He knew that Moses was going to make a move. Although he was confident that it wouldn't be difficult for him to deal with Long Wen at his peak, the foreign races and the human race had already formed an alliance. He would be crazy to make a move now. This could only be done after entering the door of darkness. However, his cultivation level was already at the early stage Lord of Creation realm. Only cultivators below the Lord of Creation realm could enter the door of darkness. He didn't have the opportunity to enter, but Moses could. Moses was the most terrifying genius in the history of the Merman race. His bloodline was also the closest to the Merman race's ancestor. His combat strength was unparalleled. In front of Moses, MD was just a piece of trash. It was because he knew how terrifying Moses was that he was confident that if Moses made a move, Long Wen would definitely die. In the Heaven and Earth Divine Sex team, Yuan also noticed Moses's gaze. His gaze turned grave. Moses gave him a lot of pressure. He could feel that Moses was much stronger than Solon. He was a real enemy. Besides Moses, the Phoenix People's Saintess was also a strong opponent. Zhuan even felt that the Phoenix People's Saintess' combat strength was probably even more terrifying than Moses's. It was just that she hid it more deeply. After entering the door of darkness, Zhuan planned to find an opportunity to find the Phoenix People's Saintess. He wanted to ask her about Mu Qinshue's current situation in the Phoenix People. Of course, besides Moses and the Phoenix People's Saintess, the Space-Time Beast race, the Black Tiger race, and the Dragon race had also sent their outstanding younger generation members. Sha Ru of the Space-Time Beast race, Hu Ben of the Black Tiger race, and Lung Bai of the Dragon race were famous among the younger generation of the Great Desolate Heaven Domain. However, Yuan felt that Sha Ru, Hu Ben, and Lung Bai were inferior to Moses and the Phoenix People's Saintess. This could be seen from their humble attitude towards Moses and the Phoenix People's Saintess. On the side of the human race, there were heavenly temples Zhongli Hao Yen, Scarlet Mountain Manors Yi Qidong and Yin Yang Divine Sex Yi Hanfei, the top 3 geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution list. And this time, the top 10 on the Universal contribution list were basically all here. All of them rubbed their palms together, eager to give it a try. Entering the door of darkness this time, there will be a fierce battle. Yao Xiangjuan sat beside Zhuan, her beautiful eyes sizing up the numerous teams around her, revealing a dignified expression. Zhuan nodded, but also had some doubts. He said, "I see that most of the young geniuses of the human race are here. On the other hand, only 5 of the top 10 alien races are here. Don't tell me that the alien races don't care about the ancestral shaman's corpse?" Yao Xiangjuan shook her head and said helplessly, "I'm not sure about this, but this is also beneficial to us. The less powerful the alien races are, the more competitive we will be." Zhuan was puzzled, but he didn't take it to heart. His eyes casually scanned the surroundings. In the past few days, the human race's camp in front of the door of darkness had increased by several times. Most of them were young geniuses from various factions and races. Soon, Zhuan's gaze froze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. This was because he saw a very familiar fat figure. It was a fat man who was bloated like a ball. He was sitting cross-legged in a small team in the northeast corner of the human race's camp. However, this fat man was very dishonest. While sitting, his eyes were rolling around, and no one knew what he was thinking. This damn fat man, after tricking me, he actually came to the door of darkness. Zhuan gritted his teeth and glared at the fat man. Ma Yujia's team was from a Dao Palace faction called the Ultimate Tower. The Ultimate Tower was a Dao Palace faction that was ranked at the bottom of the northern Dao region. They had only been able to come to the door of darkness because of luck. Ma Yujie was only a loose cultivator. After coming to the door of darkness and learning about the rules, he naturally chose to cooperate with a faction like Zhuan. This fat man was much more despicable than Zhuan. He chose the weakest faction and then used his array Dao skills to successfully cooperate with the leader of the Ultimate Tower's team. After all, this fat man was very arrogant. In the Ultimate Tower's team, he was like a boss. These few days, he had been living a life of luxury. Many of the Ultimate Tower's disciples had been unhappy with this fat man for a long time. However, out of respect for the Ultimate Tower's sect master and the fact that this fat man was truly capable, many of them had secretly swallowed their anger. At this moment, Ma Yujie casually dismissed a disciple from the Ultimate Tower. His eyes darted around as he sized up the surrounding teams. TSKC, the humans are much more attentive than the other races. More than 70% of the Dao Palace factions in the Xianmi Heavenly region are here. 5 of the top 10 races of the Eldritch Heavenly region are here. However, none of them are simple people. I have to plan my route to the door of darkness. Ma Yujie rubbed his chin with his right hand. Suddenly, he felt a cold gaze on him. Ma Yujie trembled. He turned his head and met the gaze of the owner of the gaze. Then, he quickly turned his face away. Damn, it's Yun. When did this guy come to the door of darkness? How did I not notice him? Ma Yujie muttered to himself. He pretended that he didn't see Zhuan. This wasn't Ma Yujia's fault. Although the battle between Zhuowen and MDA had been sensational, Ma Yujia hadn't yet arrived at the Door of Darkness. He had been in a treasured land outside the dark ancient city. By the time he arrived at the Door of Darkness, Zhuowen and MDA's battle had already ended. Moreover, Nguyen had been very low-key during this time. He had been sitting with the Yin-Yang Divine Sex team, resting with his eyes closed. It was normal that Ma Yujia hadn't noticed Zhuowen. Zhuowen didn't stand up to look for Ma Yujia. He knew that even if he did, this fat man would deny it. It would be a waste of effort. Moreover, he was about to enter the Door of Darkness. When the time came, he could settle the score with this fat man. After waiting on the praying mat for a while, the humans, led by Senki Yin and assisted by Xiang Puyu and Enshao Jin, walked out. On the other side, the two elders of the Phoenix people walked out. I see that the cultivators from both sides have arrived. There's no need to block the entrance of the Door of Darkness anymore. The two elders of the Phoenix people said indifferently. Naturally. From now on, we humans won't block the Door of Darkness. It's up to you outsiders, Senki Yin replied. Chapter 2961. Scarlet Valley. Everyone, you should know that the Door of Darkness has a heaven-span grand formation, right? This formation is too powerful. Even if we join forces with the alien race experts, we can't break it. Senki Yin stood at the front of the human team, floating in the air as he spoke. The two elders of the Phoenix clan also floated in front of the alien race team, their words similar to Senki Yin's. However, this formation has a special characteristic, and that is that it absolutely won't react to cultivators below the Master of Creation level. In other words, cultivators above the Master of Creation level will be attacked by the formation upon entering the Door of Darkness, while cultivators below the Master of Creation level will be able to safely pass through. Previously, for the sake of fairness, we were waiting for the genius cultivators of each faction. Now that everyone is here, we won't stop you. All cultivators below the Master of Creation level may enter. As soon as Sun Qin finished speaking, the human race and foreign race camps were in an uproar. Immediately, one figure after another impatiently rushed out and rushed into the Door of Darkness. Junior Sister Yao, the Door of Darkness is full of danger. Follow me in. This way we can take care of you. Yi Hanfei ordered as he stood up and looked at Yao Xiangjuan, who was sitting beside Zhuowen. Yao Xiangjuan frowned slightly. She didn't like Yi Hanfei's commanding tone, but she didn't contradict him either. After all, Yi Hanfei was the strongest genius of the Yin and Yang divine sect. His status was high, higher than most of the elders in the sect. Seeing Yao Xiangjuan remain silent, Yi Hanfei was unhappy and said in a low voice, "Junior Sister Yao, what are you still standing there for? Why aren't you coming over?" Yao Xiangjuan approached Zhuowen and looked up at Yi Hanfei. She was neither servile nor overbearing. "Senior brother Yi, I've already promised Longwen that I'll go with him on this trip to the Door of Darkness." "You're going with him? Although he has some strength, he's only the master of mystery. You'll be in much more danger if you follow him." "Junior Sister Yao, don't be fooled by this person's flowery words. Follow him," Chao Kangqing, who was standing beside Yi Hanfei, hurriedly advised. Unfortunately, Yao Xiangjuan still shook her head and didn't agree. "Junior brother Chao, there's no need to persuade me. We're leaving now." Yi Hanfei snorted and left with Chao Kangqing and the other outstanding disciples of the Yin and Yang divine sect. However, before he left, he shot a cold glance at Zhuowen and warned Yao Xiangjuan, "Junior Sister Yao, you'd better not regret your decision when you encounter danger in the Door of Darkness." Zhuowen also looked at Yao Xiangjuan in surprise. He didn't expect her to stand by his side so firmly. After all, with his new identity as Zhuowen, he had only known Yao Xiangjuan for 3 or 4 days. "Longwen, don't misunderstand. I'm doing this to repay you for saving my life. Don't get the wrong idea." Seeing Zhuowen looking over, Yao Xiangjuan explained calmly. "And let's go." The Door of Darkness was now open. Right now, most of the cultivators from the alliance of the human and non-human races have already entered. The news will soon spread. When the time comes, all the cultivators in the dark ancient city will flock here. Zhuowen nodded, took Yao Xiangjuan, and rushed into the door of darkness along with the crowd. Walking into the door of darkness, Zhuowen discovered the magnificence of the door, like a towering mountain. This was especially so for the ancient aura emanating from the door. It was as if it had led Zhuowen past the boundaries of time and space to the ancient era when the door was still intact. He also saw the many people and things that had happened behind the door. Sure enough, there is a formation here, and this formation is so terrifying. Approaching the door of darkness, Zhuowen finally sensed the main formation that Senki Yin and the others had mentioned. Zhuowen was an eternal level array Dao master at the peak of the eternal level. He was not far from becoming an array Dao master at the third step of the Dao confirming realm. However, he did not notice this array formation when he was outside. He only noticed it when he entered this door. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the formation on the door of darkness was. Moreover, the moment Zhuowen sensed this formation, he already knew that the mystery of this formation was far beyond his understanding. He had no doubt that if this formation was really activated, he would die without a burial place. There was no room for resistance at all. The moment Zhuowen stepped into the door of darkness, invisible ripples emerged from Zhuowen's body. Immediately, Zhuowen felt a terrifying suction force around him, forming a terrifying spiral vortex. Under this invisible suction force, Zhuowen was like a lonely boat in the sea, unable to borrow strength and could only drift with the current. The moment Zhuowen was swallowed by the suction force, he immediately grabbed Yao Xiangjuan, but unfortunately, it was too late. The suction force came too fast. In the end, he only saw Yao Xiangjuan's stunned expression, and then everything went black. When Zhuowen woke up, he found that he was in a blood-red valley full of the smell of blood. Around the valley, there were sparse plants, but the strange thing was that these plants were also blood-red. Zhuowen raised his head and looked at the sky. He found that there was no sky here at all. Instead, it was replaced by blood-red, as if the sky was covered with a boundless blood-red cloth. Looking around, Zhuowen frowned slightly, but he quickly calmed down. He knew that this should be the world inside the door of darkness. However, what made him frown was that this blood-red world was too strange. He couldn't distinguish north, south, east, or west at all. If it was another world, he could use the sun, moon, and stars to determine the correct direction. However, in this world, the sky was blood-red, and there wasn't even a single star. How could he determine his direction? Moreover, Zhuowen also found that there was no energy in this world. In other words, he couldn't absorb energy to maintain himself in this world. In this world, he could only squander energy, not absorb it. Moreover, the more energy he squandered, the less energy he had in his body. What a strange world! Zhuowen's heart sank. To cultivators, this world was simply hell. The energy here was simply too scarce. He could imagine that the longer a cultivator stayed in this world, not only would his cultivation not increase, but it would also regress. In the end, the cultivator would most likely become immortal without any cultivation. I can't stay here for long. I need to find an exit and leave this place. Zhuowen muttered to himself. He looked around and found that the scenery around him was blood-red. He didn't know where to go. I can only use the art of heavenly divination. Zhuowen had no choice. He pointed with his right hand and used the art of heavenly divination to form an eye of the void above his head. Soon, the eye of the void collapsed, and Zhuowen's face was pale. Using the art of heavenly divination consumed one's lifespan. Zhuowen wouldn't use such a secret technique unless he had no other choice. Follow those plants. Chapter 2962. The 9 Hills. 3 days later, Zhuowen stopped in a steep, blood-red valley. His eyes were sunken. Over the past 3 days, Zhuowen had been traveling in the direction with the most blood-red vegetation according to the art of divination. He originally thought that he would leave this strange place very quickly. However, he discovered that after leaving one valley, he would enter another. This process repeated itself like a cycle. After 3 days of traveling, Zhuowen's original body had used up almost 1/100th of his energy. It was only 1/100th of his original body's energy. To Zhuan it was not much at all. It could even be said to be insignificant. If he was in the outside world, he would only need a few seconds to recover from such a tiny amount of energy. However, this was not the case in the blood-red world. There was no energy of the heavenly ways here, as if it had been abandoned by the heavenly ways. He could not replenish the energy he had used up in the blood-red world at all. It was like it had completely vanished. If he wanted to recover, he would have to use the heavenly ways origin crystals in his body. Although Zhuan had stored quite a lot of heavenly ways origin crystals in his major world, they were not endless. If he remained trapped in the blood-red world, he would not have enough heavenly ways origin crystals no matter how many he had. He would run out one day. Of course, it was not like Zhuan did not discover anything in the past 3 days. He discovered that as he continued forward, more and more blood-red vegetation appeared in front of him, growing more and more luxuriant. Zhuan carefully searched the mountain valley. After discovering that there was nothing in the mountain valley, he continued to move forward. This was still a blood-red valley, but it was different from the valleys Zhuan had come across before. 9 blood-red hills that resembled cow horns stood in the surroundings of the valley. What puzzled Zhuan was that the 9 blood-red hills did not fit in with the surrounding valley. The blood-red color of the valley was innate. The rocks that formed the valley were a strange blood-red in the first place. However, the blood-red color of the 9 hills gave off an extremely pungent smell of blood. From the texture on the surface of the hill, it could be seen that the hill was not made of blood-red rocks. The color of the hill was dyed with blood. Moreover, Zhuan also discovered that there was no path in front of this valley. There was a blood-colored rock wall that was like a natural moat in front of them. Zhuan arrived in front of the crimson rock wall. He gently stroked the surface of the crimson rock wall with his right hand, feeling the uneven texture of the rock wall. An invisible ripple spread out. Zhuan's gaze became very solemn as he slowly retreated. The moment he touched the blood-colored rock wall, he clearly felt the fluctuations of the restriction on the rock wall. Although the fluctuation of the restriction was very weak, Zhuan's heart sank to the bottom. The fluctuation of the restriction just now made Zhuan feel that this restriction was not ordinary. With his current level of array Dao, he could only see a part of this restriction. Obviously, the restriction arranged in this valley was of a higher level than his array Dao level. Zhuan came to the center of the valley and sat down cross-legged. With a wave of his right hand, he summoned a beast bone array disc and arranged it around his body. He wanted to thoroughly explore the restriction in this valley so that he could find the right solution. After half a day, Zhuan put away the beast bone array disc and his gaze fell on the 9 blood-red hills that stood in 9 directions around the valley. After the deduction just now, he found that these 9 blood-red hills were the medium of the restriction arranged around the valley. The restriction was activated by these 9 hills. Zhuan came to the blood-red hill closest to him. His right hand formed a fist and suddenly blasted out. A terrifying wind swept out and landed on the blood-red hill. Bang! With a muffled sound, dense ripples appeared on the surface of the blood-red hill. Zhuan let out a muffled groan and directly flew backward. He fell to the ground in a rather embarrassing manner and looked at the blood-red hill above him with a solemn expression. The surface of this blood-red hill has the peak of the Genesis Realm defensive formation. It's obviously impossible for me to break it with my strength. Moreover, the blow just now consumed 1/10 of my energy. Zhuan muttered to himself with a pained expression. This was not the outside world, where there was an endless amount of heavenly energy to replenish his own energy. Here, every time he used an attack, the energy in his body would decrease by a little. With the power of the Pangu sacred body of his doppelganger, it would not be a problem to forcibly break these 9 hills, but the consumption would be very large. He had just entered the door of darkness not long ago, and he had already wasted most of his energy on this restriction. Obviously, the gains did not make up for the losses. Thinking of this, Zhuan no longer continued to attack. Instead, he sat around a blood-red hill and waved out beast bone array discs to begin cracking the restriction on the surface of this blood-red hill. Zhuan was different from the ordinary formation Dao masters. He had the true alchemy array record with him. In addition, Zhuowen's comprehension was not weak. Moreover, he had been stuck at the peak of the eternal level for a long time. He planned to use the restriction in this valley to make a breakthrough in his formation Dao level in one fell swoop and reach a higher level. Time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, more than half a month had passed. During this period, Yuan basically sat in the center of the valley and waved out beast bone array discs to crack the 9 blood-red hills surrounding the valley. The restriction in this valley was indeed an extremely powerful god of creation stage formation. While Zhuan was cracking this formation, he was also comprehending the operation trajectory and Taoist rhymes of the Genesis realm formation. In the process of cracking this formation, he was constantly comprehending the true alchemy array record. His formation's Dao standard was currently rising at an inconceivable speed. Bang, bang, bang. 2 months passed. This time, Zhuowen stopped forming seals with his hands. He slowly opened his eyes, and a bright light erupted from the depths of his eyes. Break! Zhuowen softly shouted as he slowly withdrew his hands. The beast bone formation discs that were revolving around him all landed at his feet. At this moment, the entire valley began to tremble violently. Thump! Zhuowen suddenly stood up and took a step forward. Like a flying immortal, he swept out and arrived in front of one of the blood-red hills in an instant. Immediately, he held the beast bone array discs in his right hand and slammed them into the surface of the blood-red hill. Dense ripples appeared on the surface of the blood-red hill and swept out like a storm. The moment this fluctuation was set off, the beast bone disc array suddenly exploded, bursting out with even more terrifying energy, completely covering and submerging the energy ripples on the surface of the hill. Boom! On the other hand, countless cracks appeared on the blood-colored hill before it finally collapsed into countless fine rocks. After destroying this blood-red hill, Zhuan moved like the wind and swept to the next blood-red hill and did the same. Chapter 2963. Strange flesh and blood. Zhuowen stood silently above the valley with a look of enlightenment in his eyes. Ripples that were even more intense than the blood-red hill from before appeared around him. Looks like my formation Dao level has been elevated at this moment. I've finally reached the God of Creation level. Zhuan murmured with excitement in his eyes. At the same time, the blood-red rock wall at the very front of the valley actually began to squirm as if it had come alive. An earth-shattering roar resounded from the wriggling rock wall. Zhuan focused his gaze and discovered that the blood-red rock wall wasn't a real rock wall. Instead, it was a mass of squirming flesh and blood. This mass of flesh and blood contained an extremely terrifying aura and energy. At this moment, it was squirming and rapidly rushing toward Zhuan. As it rushed over, it even emitted a strange gurgling sound. When the mass of flesh and blood neared Zhuan, Yuan could clearly see that the surface of the mass of flesh and blood was covered with countless blood-red eyes. Just looking at it would probably give people with trypophobia goosebumps. Boom! Zhuowen's right hand clenched into a fist and violently punched out. The fist force was like an enraged dragon as it rumbled through the air. In the instant that Zhuowen's right fist landed on the mass of flesh and blood, his expression changed slightly. This was because he discovered that his fist seemed to have landed on cotton. There was nothing he could borrow strength from at all. Then, the mass of flesh and blood exploded into a boundless blood mist, which directly enveloped Zhuowen's entire body. Zhuan didn't even think that something like this would happen. He was caught off guard and allowed the mass of flesh and blood to succeed. In the instant that the blood mist enshrouded Zhuowen, it immediately solidified into a mass of flesh and blood that enveloped Zhuowen's entire body. Zhuan only felt his vision darken. An endless stench of blood rushed into his nostrils, causing him to involuntarily frown. He probed with his divine sense and discovered that his entire body had been wrapped in that strange mass of flesh and blood. His limbs were firmly sucked in by the force of the flesh and blood, making it difficult for him to move. Furthermore, the moment the flesh and blood attached to his body, it began to rapidly absorb the blood essence in his body through the surface of his skin. Seeing his blood essence being sucked away and his body becoming weaker and weaker, Zhuowen's eyes darkened. With a cold snort, he released his doppelganger in the great world. A black-clothed doppelganger flew out from the great world. Immediately, he formed a seal with both hands and used the profound meaning to create a chi blade. He gripped two gigantic white chi blades in his palms and immediately slashed out hundreds of times. The saber chi surged as if it was going to rush up into the sky and tear the sky apart. The strange mass of flesh and blood was directly blasted into countless blood foam by the sky-opening blade and fell to the ground. Meanwhile, the original body took advantage of this opportunity to immediately escape. The main body staggered to the side and looked at the countless pieces of flesh that had turned into blood foam. His eyes were solemn as he said, "What the hell is this? It actually directly absorbed the blood essence in my body." The main body's face was very pale. A lot of his blood essence had been absorbed, and even most of the energy in his body had been absorbed. Now, he was extremely weak and probably didn't even have the strength to stand up. In addition, there was no heavenly energy in this strange world at all. Therefore, he had no choice but to take out a portion of the heavenly Tao origin crystal from the great world and began to absorb the heavenly energy in the heavenly Tao origin crystal to replenish the energy that the main body had just lost. The doppelganger held the sky-opening blade in both hands and looked at the mass of flesh and blood that had been blasted into blood foam with great vigilance. This was because he discovered that the blood foam that had splattered on the ground was constantly wriggling, and then began to rapidly mix together to form the original appearance of the flesh and blood. The doppelganger didn't give the flesh and blood a chance to recombine. He took a step forward and quickly slashed out with the sky-opening blade in both hands. His speed was extremely fast, and the originally gathered flesh and blood once again collapsed into countless blood foam. Moreover, in order to prevent the blood foam from recombining, Zhuan cut the flesh and blood even finer, almost insignificant. Even so, the flesh and blood still rapidly recombined as if they were undying. Zhuan looked at the flesh and blood that had gathered together again with a grave expression. The flesh and blood was not very powerful, but it was very difficult to deal with. If it were any other time, Zhuan wouldn't care about it at all. However, he couldn't replenish his heavenly energy here at all. Every battle consumed a lot of his energy. If the flesh and blood continued to tangle with each other, even his doppelganger would probably die at the hands of the strange flesh and blood. Zhuan swung the sky-opening blade again. After blasting the flesh and blood into countless pieces, he took a step forward, brushing past the dense blood foam as he began to flee. After the bloody wall turned into the strange mass of flesh and blood, the scene behind the wall was exposed. It was a completely different world from where Zhuan was. Outside the wall was a boundless lush grassland, forming a stark contrast with the bloody valley he was in. This should be the exit. Zhuan's eyes were filled with ecstasy. He sped up and rushed out of the bloody valley, entering the lush grassland. However, the excitement on Zhuan's face quickly disappeared. This was because he discovered that after entering the lush grassland, he actually discovered that there was still no heavenly energy around him. The situation was no different from the bloody valley from before. It was just that the scenery had changed, but the essence hadn't changed. "Looks like I was happy for nothing." Zhuan smiled bitterly. He knew that he still hadn't walked out of this strange world. He had only come to a different area of this strange world. The art of heaven's divination only calculated the exit of the bloody valley, but it didn't calculate the real exit of this strange world. Zhuan sighed softly. He was in a daze, but a roar woke him up. He raised his head and discovered that at the border between the grassland and the bloody valley, a strange mass of flesh and blood was roaring madly in Zhuan's direction, as if Zhuan owed it a huge debt. However, the mass of flesh and blood was very wary of the grassland outside the valley. It only roared at the edge, not daring to take half a step out of the valley into the grassland. Zhuan silently watched the actions of the mass of flesh and pondered. It seemed that there was a limit to the mass of flesh and blood. It couldn't take half a step out of the valley. Zhuan no longer paid attention to the madly roaring mass of flesh and blood. Instead, he turned around and looked in another direction of the grassland with a grave expression. He now had some guesses about this strange world. This world should be similar to other ordinary worlds, with various landforms and sceneries. The bloody valley he had entered for the first time was probably one of the landforms in this world. Now that he had walked out of the bloody valley, he naturally entered a different landform. Chapter 2964. Explosive Destruction Formation. Zhuowen did not move forward directly. Instead, he sat cross-legged and took out some Heavenly Way origin crystals from the macro world to restore the energy that his doppelganger and true body had consumed. There were many Heavenly Way origin crystals in the macro world, and even more divine herbs. However, Zhuowen did not dare to squander them. Who knew how long he would stay in this world? After his doppelganger and true body were restored, he put his true body into the macro world and summoned the Blood Fairy Sword. However, as soon as the Blood Fairy Sword appeared, it sent him a message with divine thought, asking where this place was. Because the Blood Fairy Sword felt powerless as soon as it appeared in this world. It was even difficult to maintain the flying sword. Zhuowen briefly explained this world to the Blood Fairy Sword, then summoned the Thunder Fire Sword and the Death Sacrifice Sword. However, the two swords were in the same situation as the Blood Fairy Sword. They had an unprecedented sense of powerlessness in this world. Zhuowen's heart sank. He knew that divine artifacts were completely suppressed in this world. In other words, he could not use divine artifacts in this world. Although Zhuowen's clone cultivated the Pangu's sacred body and rarely used divine artifacts under normal circumstances, his original body did not have such a strong physical body. When the original body attacked, he had to rely on divine artifacts to unleash more powerful attacks. Now, the three divine swords could not operate normally in this world. His true body had lost a great help. After Zhuowen had completely recovered, he waved his sleeve and took out 9 beast bone formation discs from the macro world. He began to refine a formation. The formation he was refining this time was called the Explosive Destruction Formation. It was a Genesis-level formation. The activation of the Explosive Destruction Formation was very convenient. After Zhuowen finished the formation, he left a trace of divine thought on it. As long as his divine thought moved, the formation would immediately explode and sweep up a terrifying power. This was the first Genesis-level formation that Zhuowen had learned from the true Elixir formation record after he became a Genesis-level formation master. It's done! Zhuowen opened his right hand, revealing a dark, oval-shaped object lying quietly in his palm. It had to be said that the shape of the explosion array was very similar to the grenades on Earth. Of course, the former's power was much more terrifying than a grenade's. If it was completely detonated, even a god of creation who had stepped into the first stage of the third step of Tao validation would die. Zhuowen stayed on the grassland for about 3 days and 3 nights, refining 9 explosive destruction arrays. With these 9 explosive destruction arrays, Zhuowen felt more confident. However, if he didn't encounter any great danger on this grassland, these 9 explosive destruction arrays could be easily dealt with. After doing all this, Zhuowen once again used the art of divine calculation to calculate a direction, then reorganized and set off again. A month later, Zhuowen stopped on top of a small hill. His eyes fell on the small hill in front of him, and his expression changed greatly. In the distance in front of the small slope, there were densely packed black shadows that were constantly wriggling. These black shadows were actually a group of black ants. These black ants were as big as a human head. They were so densely packed that they almost completely dyed the grassland in front of the small slope black. Based on the crawling trajectory of these black ants, it could be seen that they were very anxious and full of hostility. After taking a closer look, Zhuowen discovered that in the center of these black ants, there was a group of cultivators who were struggling to resist the encirclement of these black ants. This group of cultivators consisted of 7 people, 3 men and 4 women. All of them were doing their best to activate their heavenly Tao power to resist the black ants around them. The black ants were killed one by one, and their corpses fell to the ground. Soon, they were covered by the black ants behind them. This group of black ants came one after another, and there was no end to them. The 7 of them were having a very difficult time resisting. They were like a lone boat in the middle of the waves, tottering on the verge of collapse. It wouldn't be long before the 7 of them were completely wiped out and eaten by the black ants. Zhuan didn't want to pay attention to them, but his gaze inadvertently caught a familiar figure in this group of people. Junior's sister Yao, Zhuowen, fell into the group of 7. Standing at the back was a beautiful woman. Wasn't this woman Yao Xiangjuan, who had separated from Zhuowen in the door of darkness? Zhuowen's eyes flickered, and he sighed softly. With his personality, he wouldn't meddle in other people's business. After all, everyone in this world was in danger, and his abilities were extremely limited. If he meddled too much, he would lose an opportunity. However, he couldn't ignore Yao Xiangjuan. Thinking of this, Yuan jumped down and rushed into the black ant swarm in front of him. The dense black ant swarm also sensed the human coming from afar. They all screeched, and a portion of the black ants quickly rushed toward Yuan like a surging black wave. In the center of the black ant swarm, the 7 cultivators were in despair. There were simply too many black ants around them, and they couldn't kill them all. Moreover, this world didn't have heavenly Tao energy. The energy they lost in battle could only be recovered through the heavenly Tao origin crystals or divine medicine in their spirit rings. Thus, the more they fought, the weaker their bodies became. In the end, they definitely wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being killed by the black ant swarm. Senior brother Jiang, what should we do now? A delicate female cultivator was so scared that tears flowed out of her eyes. She was in a daze as she looked at the tall and sturdy man holding a long sword at the front. Among the 7 of them, this man's cultivation was undoubtedly the most powerful. He was already at the early stage of the God of Creation stage. The long sword in his hand had dimmed, and it no longer had the heavenly Tao energy of a divine weapon. Although the power of divine weapons was completely suppressed in this world, this man was most likely proficient in using swords. Thus, even though the divine sword in his hand no longer had any heavenly Tao energy, he was still able to use it to kill enemies. This senior brother Jiang was no stranger to Zhuan. He was Jiang Qixing, one of the 5 freaks of the host region that he had seen at the 10 Extreme Een Corpse Sex Freak Banquet. At this moment, although Jiang Qixing's expression was calm, he was extremely anxious on the inside. He didn't know how to answer that delicate female cultivator's question. Could it be that we're going to die here today? We just entered the door of darkness not long ago. We thought that we would be able to obtain many treasures and return with a bountiful harvest. Who would have thought that we would enter such a torturous hell? If I had known that the other side of the door of darkness was like this, I wouldn't have entered even if you beat me to death. The remaining cultivators in the group of 7 all had expressions of despair on their faces as they complained incessantly. Yao Xiangjuan stood at the very back of the group. Her slender hand formed a palm and suddenly blasted out. After repelling the black ants that were attacking from behind, her brows furrowed slightly. Fine beads of sweat had already covered her pristine forehead. Her heart was heavy. She knew that if this continued, they would undoubtedly die. However, she soon discovered that the attacks of the black ants around them had weakened. To be more precise, the number of black ants had decreased. Look, someone is charging toward us. Chapter 2965. SS Black Ant Swarm. Bang, bang, bang. The speed of this figure was simply too fast. Wherever it passed, the densely packed black ants would all let out shrill cries as they were all sent flying. They were simply unable to block the charge of this figure. When the figure approached, everyone saw that it was a young man with 2 scars on his face. The young man's body emitted a crystal-clear light as if he was carved out of jade. Whenever the black ants rushed at the young man, they were blasted away by his terrifying physical body. How did this guy do it? In the team, the delicate female cultivator opened her mouth and looked at the young man in disbelief. They had fought with the black ants for a while and knew how difficult it was to deal with them. The black ants' main attack method was the pair of sharp teeth in their mouths. They were like the sharpest weapons in the world, breaking their defenses time and time again. They were exhausted from running for their lives. Surrounded by many black ants, the 7 of them worked together to barely resist the attacks of the black ants, but they couldn't hold on for long. However, this person was too abnormal. He rushed directly into the swarm and didn't fear the attacks of the ants at all. He resisted all the attacks of the ants and rushed toward them. Jiang Qixing looked at the scarred young man with a grave gaze. He was a little puzzled. He didn't know this person, so why would he risk coming to save them? Yao Xiangjuan, who was at the back of the team, finally saw the true face of the figure. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but widen. Longwen, Yao Xiangjuan muttered to herself. She was in disbelief, surprised, and happy. She was surprised because the black ants here were too big. She was a little worried about Zhuowen, but she was happy because she could meet Longwen again so soon. Back when she entered the door of darkness, she immediately separated from Zhuowen. After entering this world, she encountered many dangers. Later, she met Jiang Qixing and the others and formed a team with them. Until now, when they encountered the black ants, they were in a life-and-death crisis. It was naturally a pleasant surprise for Yao Xiangjuan to meet someone familiar in such a life-and-death situation. Boom! Zhuowen suddenly punched out and blasted away the ants in front of him. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Jiang Qixing's team. His Pangu's sacred body had a natural advantage. His strong defense allowed him to ignore the attacks of these black ants. That was why he could reach the center of the black ants in such a short time. However, this was extremely taxing on Zhuowen. By the time he reached the core area of the black ant swarm, most of his doppelganger's energy had already been depleted. The crystalline glow on his physical body had also dimmed. Zhuowen frantically took out piles of heavenly Tao origin crystals from his great world and absorbed their energy. As he recovered his energy, he blasted away all the black ants in front of him. Fate spaced him kill, break for me. Zhuowen pointed a finger with his right hand. Immediately, an endless purple river rushed out from the space behind him and swept towards the group of ants in the core region. The moment the ants were engulfed by the purple river, they all strangely stopped crawling. Then, they all strangely fell to the ground, motionless. They had all died. The moment the purple river raged, 2/3 of the black ants in the core inexplicably died. Jiang Qixing, Yao Xiangjuan, and the others, who were originally suffocated by the black ants in the core, suddenly felt the pressure on them lighten. They looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you for saving us, fellow Taoist." Jiang Qixing hurriedly stepped forward, cupped his hands to Zhuowen, and said in a deep voice. Zhuowen waved his hand and did not say anything to Jiang Qixing. Instead, he stepped in front of Yao Xiangjuan and said, "Junior sister Yao, it's dangerous here. Come with me." With that, Zhuowen grabbed Yao Xiangjuan's jade-like hand and rushed outside. Yao Xiangjuan did not refuse and let Zhuowen pull her. To be honest, the scarred young man in front of her did not hesitate to come and save her after discovering that she was deeply trapped in the ant colony. It was enough to show that this person really cared about her. This action made Yao Xiangjuan have a good impression of Zhuowen. Her previous bad impression of him had turned into a good one. When Jiang Qixing saw the scarred young man who had saved them pull Yao Xiangjuan away as soon as he arrived, they knew that this person had not come to save them, but Yao Xiangjuan. Saving them was probably just a matter of convenience. Although it was just a matter of convenience, they were still very grateful. After all, if it were not for this person, they would have completely fallen under the endless attack of the black ants and died gloriously. "Senior brother Jiang, what should we do next?" When the delicate female cultivator saw that the scarred young man did not come to save them, there was a touch of disappointment in her beautiful eyes. "Follow this person. If we follow him, our chances of breaking out will greatly increase." Jiang Qixing made a prompt decision and led everyone to follow closely behind Zhu. Zhuowen pulled Yao Xiangjuan and continued to rush outside. Naturally, he also noticed Jiang Qixing and the others behind him. However, he did not care. If Jiang Qixing and the others could keep up with his footsteps, he did not mind helping them. If they could not keep up, then they could not blame him. Soon, Zhuowen stopped and looked ahead with an unsightly expression. Not far ahead, layers of black ants were stacked in front of them like a tall black wall, blocking their way. The number of black ants seems to be even more than before. Yao Xiangjuan's face turned pale and her delicate body trembled slightly as she looked at the dense and seemingly endless black ants in front of her. Jiang Qixing and the others who were following behind also saw the terrifying scene in front of them. Their faces were as pale as snow. Zhuan showed a thoughtful expression. He felt that the appearance of these black ants was a little strange. Although the black ants were huge and numerous earlier, there were not as many as there were now. After he rescued Yao Xiangjuan and the others, the number of black ants suddenly increased. It was like a human army calling for reinforcements after knowing that they were at a disadvantage. If this was the case, then there must be a leader somewhere secretly directing the actions of these black ants. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's glabella flashed with a golden light, releasing a powerful and continuous divine sense. After being nourished by the Panga banner, his divine sense had an extremely terrifying penetrating power, much sharper and more powerful than that of ordinary cultivators. His divine sense radiated out layer by layer, enveloping the entire area where the black ants were, and then went deep into the ground layer by layer. "Brother, the black ants are about to attack," Jiang Qixing could not help but remind Zhuan when he saw that he suddenly stopped in front of him, as if in a daze. However, Zhuan turned a deaf ear to him and just stood there motionless. Chapter 2966. Estancia Qingyang read the black ant swarm was getting closer and closer. Jiang Qixing and the others were all rousing the energy in their bodies, preparing to face the approaching black ant swarm. However, their faces were pale. The black ant swarm this time was much larger and more terrifying than the previous one. Just now, they had a slim chance of survival. Now that they had consumed a lot of energy, they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold on for long if they encountered an even more terrifying black ant swarm. When the black ant swarm was about to reach them, Zhuan suddenly opened his eyes, grabbed Yao Xiangjuan's hand, and quickly retreated. He shouted to Jiang Qixing and the others, "Retreat!" There was no need for Zhuowen's reminder. The moment he retreated, Jiang Qixing and the others had already retreated. As Zhuowen flew backwards, he threw the explosion extermination array into the swarm of ants. With a thought, the explosion extermination array exploded with a loud bang. Rumble! The terrifying sound of the explosion resounded through the sky. The dense swarm of ants in front of them was attacked and swallowed by the terrifying explosion wave, and shrill screams could be heard incessantly. High up in the sky, a terrifying mushroom cloud rose. Waves of air surged, and the entire grassland exploded violently. It was very terrifying. Zhuan, Yao Xiangjuan, Jiang Qixing, and the others were directly pushed back by the powerful air waves. They flew back for thousands of meters before landing on the ground. Zhuan was still fine. He borrowed the force of the air and pulled Yao Xiangjuan to land steadily. Jiang Qixing, on the other hand, was in a rather sorry state. He staggered for a while after landing on the ground. Fortunately, he controlled his body and barely managed to stand. On the other hand, the others in Jiang Qixing's team fell directly on their butts. They were in a very sorry state. After all, the battle with the black ant swarm was too intense. They had consumed too much energy and their bodies were too weak. Explosive destruction formation? You're a Genesis Divine Array Master? When Jiang Qixing saw the terrifying explosion in the distance, his gaze fell on Zhuowen, full of surprise. Zhuowen didn't answer Jiang Qixing's question. Instead, he said, "You guys better be careful. These black ants are probably being controlled by something. They'll come back soon. You guys stay here and recover. I need to go underground to find out what's controlling these black ants." Jiang Qixing's face was full of embarrassment when he heard this. He wanted to say something but hesitated. "What's wrong?" Zhuowen couldn't help but ask. Brother, do you still have Heavenly Tao origin crystals on you? Can I borrow some?" "Don't worry, I'm a disciple of the Sunseeker Temple, a Tao Palace level force in the host region. I won't refuse to return the money." After Jiang Qixing finished speaking, his cheeks reddened in embarrassment. He was one of the 5 great monsters of the Eastern Tao region and the strongest genius of the Sunseeker Shrine. He had never lacked Heavenly Law origin crystals, let alone borrow them from others. This was his first time borrowing a heavenly law origin crystal from someone else, so he was naturally a little embarrassed. Brother Jiang, you're a genius of the Sunseeker Shrine, right? Don't you have any heavenly law origin crystals on you? Zhuan asked in surprise. Jiang Qixing's expression became even more awkward. He rubbed his nose and laughed dryly. I originally had quite a few heavenly law origin crystals on me, but in the month we entered the door of darkness, we encountered many dangers and went through many battles. That's why the heavenly law origin crystals were all used up. Brother Jiang, the value of heavenly law origin crystals in the outside world is ordinary, but I'm afraid you know better than me how important they are here. Zhuowen said indifferently. Jiang Qixing's expression became even more awkward. Bowen was right. In this strange world where heavenly law energy was scarce, heavenly law origin crystals were indeed very important and could be said to be priceless. Jiang Qixing gritted his teeth and said, Brother Long, as long as you can lend me some heavenly law origin crystals, I, Jiang Qixing, am willing to use the Sunseeker Shrine as a guarantee and agree to one of your requests. Brother Jiang, although your status in the Sunseeker Shrine is high, you can't represent the Sunseeker Shrine. Zhuowen shook his head, feeling that Jiang Qixing was overestimating himself. Longwen, you probably don't know Jiang Qixing's status in the Sunseeker Shrine. Not only is he the #1 genius of the Sunseeker Shrine, he's also the most beloved son of the current sect master and the best candidate for the next sect master. It can be said that Jiang Qixing's status in the Sunseeker Shrine is second only to one and above all. Yao Xiangjuan softly said to Zhuowen, Brother Long, please. I'm indeed the son of the Sunseeker Shrine's sect master and also the next sect master that my father personally appointed. I still have a lot of authority in the Sunseeker Shrine. As long as I can do it, I'll help you even if I have to die 1,000 times, Jiang Qixing hurriedly said. Zhuowen pondered for a moment and then said, Brother Jiang, I need a divine heaven-grade herb right now. Does your Sunseeker Shrine have such a herb? Jiang Qixing's expression immediately turned ugly. A divine heaven-grade herb was really too precious. An ordinary Dao Palace faction might not necessarily have such a high-grade herb. In Jiang Qixing's opinion, Nguyen was asking for too much. If you don't have it, then forget it. Zhuowen shook his head and then threw nearly 100 heavenly Dao origin crystals to Jiang Qixing. I'll give you these heavenly Dao origin crystals. It'll be enough for you to recover some of your Yuan Qi. Also, you should leave this place as soon as possible. The black ants shouldn't be so easy to deal with. Jiang Qixing put away the heavenly Dao origin crystals that Zhuowen handed over. His eyes narrowed because he found that these were all supreme-grade heavenly Dao origin crystals that Zhuowen had given him. Thank you, Brother Long. If you have time in the future, I hope you can come to the Sunseeker Shrine as a guest. Jiang Qixing hurriedly thanked him. Zhuowen waved his hand and didn't mind. He really wasn't familiar with Jiang Qixing and the Sunseeker Shrine. This time, it was just a small matter. He naturally wouldn't really go to the Sunseeker Shrine in the future. Brother Long, there's one thing I still want to tell you. Our Sunseeker Shrine does indeed have a divine heaven-grade herb. Jiang Qixing said with some hesitation. What? Your Sunseeker Shrine has a divine heaven-grade herb? What kind of herb is it? Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he hurriedly asked. It seems to be called Red Sun Pill. Jiang Qixing said with some uncertainty. Zhuowen showed a look of ecstasy. Red Sun Pill was one of the 6 divine heaven-grade herbs used to refine the 6 desires spirit-condensing Saint Pill. However, Zhuowen quickly calmed down. He knew that a divine herb of this level must be an extremely precious treasure in the Sunseeker Shrine. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that it was the most precious treasure of the Sunseeker Shrine. It definitely couldn't be given to an outsider. However, this thing was too important to Zhuowen. It was the key to whether or not he could awaken Moyan of Wushang. Can you give me the divine herb of your Sunseeker Shrine? Don't worry, I will take out something not inferior to the value of this divine herb in exchange for it. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Jiang Qixing quickly reminded Yao Xiangjuan when he saw her staring at Zhuowen's back in a daze. Yao Xiangjuan came back to her senses and nodded. She followed Jiang Qixing and the others and fled to the other side of the grassland. Zhuan came to the front of the densely packed ant swarm with a sneer. He took out another explosion array and threw it into the ant swarm, then immediately drilled into the depths of the ground. When he reached a certain depth, with a single thought, the explosion extermination array completely exploded. An earth-shattering explosion resounded from the ground. Zhuan didn't pay attention to the results of the explosion array and continued to go deeper into the ground. His divine sense was like a radar, constantly radiating towards the deepest part of the ground. Just now, he had investigated and found that there was definitely something in the depths of the ground that was controlling the movements of the black ants above the grassland. Soon, he locked onto a direction and rushed in that direction like a fish. In the deepest part of the grassland, there was a natural cave. The cave was very large, about the size of dozens of football fields. In the center of the cave, there was a bamboo that was only as thick as an index finger. However, this asparagus was not emerald green, but golden yellow. This asparagus bamboo had 9 segments. Above the golden bamboo, there was a dense golden mist. This golden mist constantly rolled and intertwined, forming a phantom of a Buddha. Moreover, this cave was different from the outside world. There was an extremely rich heavenly energy, and this heavenly energy mainly came from the golden bamboo growing in the center of the cave. At this moment, next to the golden bamboo, there was a thumb-sized golden ant lying on the side of the bamboo. It seemed to be silently absorbing the heavenly energy emitted by the golden bamboo, and there was a human-like expression of enjoyment and satisfaction on its face. Boom! Suddenly, in the southeast corner of the cave, a figure broke into the cave and immediately attracted the attention of the golden ant. This figure was none other than Zhuan. At this moment, Zhuan immediately focused his attention on the golden bamboo in the center of the cave. His whole body seemed to be struck by lightning, and he was stunned on the spot. But soon, Zhuan laughed and his eyes showed excitement. Buddha yellow water bamboo? It's actually Buddha yellow water bamboo. Zhuan muttered to himself excitedly. This Buddha yellow water bamboo was also one of the 6 divine herbs used to refine the 6 desires spirit-condensing saint pill. Its value was no different from the red sun pill that Jiang Qixing had mentioned before. But in next to no time, Zhuan felt a strand of a feeling of danger. He turned around and noticed a thumb-sized golden ant by the side of the Buddha yellow water bamboo was staring at him with a hostile expression. This golden ant was gilded as if it was forged from gold. Although it was not big, the aura that flowed out of its body made Zhuan very wary. It seems that this guy should be the behind-the-scenes commander of the black ant swarm. Zhuan's eyes flickered as he looked at the Buddha yellow water bamboo next to the golden ant with a look of understanding. No wonder Jiang Qixing, Yao Xiangjuan, and the others were attacked by so many black ants after entering this grassland area. It seemed that it was because there was actually a heaven-level divine medicine, Buddha yellow water bamboo, underground in this grassland area. Obviously, when Jiang Qixing and the others entered this grassland, the Ant King thought that this group of humans was here to seize the Buddha yellow water bamboo underground. That was why it desperately summoned the black ants to attack Jiang Qixing and the others. While Zhuan was observing the golden Ant King, the Ant King's black pearl-like eyes were also staring straight at Zhuan. Its eyes were filled with a trace of doubt. The natural cave it was in was extremely hidden. Back then, it had spent a lot of effort to finally find this cave and the Buddha yellow water bamboo that lived in the center of the cave. This human had only entered this grassland not long ago, but he was actually able to find the Buddha yellow water bamboo that it was guarding in such a short period of time. Suddenly, the golden ant let out a strange hiss, and the huge cave around it trembled violently. Then, many small holes appeared on the surface of the cave. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.